Chapter 658. Suyu, who was thousands of miles away, had an awkward expression. This was not the first time he had stolen someone else's treasure. However, this was the first time he had stolen something from an innocent person, so he felt a little guilty. In a sense, if Suyu had not intervened, the old man's life would have been in vain, not to mention whether the item would have belonged to him. But to Suyu, it was still a little difficult to accept. "I'm sorry, Baichong," Suyu murmured. "This item is very precious to me. If I have the opportunity, I will compensate you." Suyu muttered to himself. He surveyed his surroundings and found a valley filled with flowers. It was a suitable place to hide. Tilting his shoulder, Suyu landed and entered the valley. He then found a suitable place to sit down cross-legged. He took out the jade box and looked at the nimble living creature, the small white horse. He could not help but click his tongue in wonder. He was no longer the kid he had been in the past. After experiencing the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion, his eyesight had improved. It was not difficult for him to see that the overflowing, powerful living creature was actually a plant. Cloud galloping horse. It is strange that the Jinlong continent could produce such a spiritual creature. Yun Yazi let out a surprised cry. A plant like the cloud galloping horse requires extremely dense spiritual energy to grow. Even in a place like the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion, it would be impossible for it to grow. Even though the spiritual energy in the Jinlong continent is 10 times denser, it is only comparable to that of the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion. I cannot see the possibility of such a spiritual creature growing here. This is strange. So you had some doubts in his heart. From what he knew, wasn't the Empire of Darkness surrounded by the otherworldly army? How did Baichong escape? Why did he have the cloud galloping horse? And why was he being hunted by the otherworldly fighters? The strangeness of the matter was incomprehensible. Let's not worry about it for now. Master, is it suitable to consume this item directly? So you could not resist the temptation. If it could refine vital energy for fairies, wouldn't it be even more effective for half-fairies? Unexpectedly, Yun Yazi did not hold back. If you do not wish to die from the poison, then consume it. I will not stop you. Suyu raised his brows. Does the cloud galloping horse have a deadly poison? Even though the cloud galloping horse is a spiritual creature of the universe, and it can provide great assistance to cultivators, it still contains a strange poison. Even if it were to be swallowed by a level 4 fairy, who could resist it with their powerful vital energy, the poison would still take effect on everyone else. Even though your first dragon's body is quite powerful, it still isn't at the level where you are immune to all poisons. So he was not frightened. Instead, he revealed a thoughtful expression. Then, Master, how should I consume this? Do you need to refine pills? Yun Yazi nodded. Yes, you need to combine it with a few precious ingredients to neutralize the poison, then refine it into a medicinal pill. As for these ingredients, you can find a few portions in the Jinlong continent, but I'm afraid you'll have to calculate the time needed to find them in months. Yun Yazi consoled him. Don't be discouraged. The cloud galloping horse is in your hands, so consuming it is only a matter of time. If everything goes as I expected, the day you consume, it will be the day you advance to the 3 crystals half-fairy realm. Suyu's eyes flickered with a shrewd light, and he slowly nodded. All right, I understand. Yes, you have been busy with political affairs recently, so your cultivation time has been reduced. You need to quickly deal with the matters of the continent. Only then will I be able to guide you at any time. During this period of time, I will recuperate. If there is nothing urgent, you don't have to wake me up. Suyu did not know that Yun Yazi had once appeared and killed an all-creation old monster. As a result, his soul had been severely damaged. This time, he would have to enter a state of deep sleep for a longer period of time to recover his soul energy. Suyu was stunned. He was going to enter a state of deep sleep again. However, he immediately revealed an eager look. That's fine. All right, take care of yourself. I hope that you will give me another surprise the next time I wake up. After Yun Yazi finished speaking, the jade box became deathly silent. So you try to sense Yun Yazi several times. After confirming that Yun Yazi had entered a state of deep sleep, he looked at the jade box containing the cloud galloping horse. He He smiled meaningfully and said, "There is no need to wait for the next time. I can give you a surprise now." He opened his right palm and took out the cloud galloping horse, spreading it out on his palm. The cloud galloping horse, which was clearly a spiritual herb, looked like a real horse. Its small, snow-white body was bouncing around energetically. Poison? Suyu was surprised. He thought for a moment, then plucked a strand of white hair from the cloud galloping horse. Using his soul eyes, Suyu carefully observed the hair. He could faintly see that there was a white liquid hidden within the hair. Even though Suyu had the soul eyes, he would not have noticed that there was something hidden within the hair if he had not been warned. He then observed the entire cloud galloping horse. It was not difficult to discover that every part of the cloud galloping horse's body, its blood vessels, veins, flesh, and even its skin, contained a white liquid. It was undoubtedly the poison that Yun Yazi had said could kill anyone below the grade 4 fairy realm. After thinking for a moment, Suyu inserted the strand of hair he had plucked into the ground. The white liquid within the hair slowly seeped into the ground. At once, the blooming flowers and grass under Suyu's feet gradually turned yellow and lost their color. Finally, they were charred black, all of them decaying from the poison. The snakes, bugs, rats, and ants that were hiding in the valley were all poisoned to the ground. In just a short moment, the valley had become a world of death. At the same time, the air in the valley had a faint milky white color. After taking a breath, Suyu felt dizzy and shocked. Not good. Suyu immediately rose into the air, standing 10 miles away in the sky. At the same time, he revolved his vital energy to expel the milky white air from his body. Suyu was slightly shocked to discover that the milky white air was not afraid of his vital energy. It gradually spread throughout Suyu's body, completely unharmed. Suyu's head became even more dizzy, and the scene in front of him became blurry. It was a sign that he was about to lose consciousness. A sense of danger welled up in his heart. He had wanted to test if the cloud galloping horse was poisoned, but he did not expect it to be so difficult to deal with. Even his vital energy was useless. Clenching his teeth, the thunder crystal in Suyu's dantian immediately released a large amount of lightning. However, when the destructive lightning came into contact with the milky white air, it was as if it had passed through an ordinary fog. It was not affected in the slightest. The milky white air continued to spread throughout Suyu's body. Suyu's heart thumped. He had really provoked an incredible poison. Sensing that his consciousness had become even more blurry, Suyu's heart became serious. Since lightning did not work, Suyu immediately used ice. He used ice techniques to condense frost to freeze the milky white air in his body. At first, the milky white air was indeed frozen. However, after a short moment, the milky white air regained its freedom and started wreaking havoc in Suyu's body. Chapter 659. Sizzle, sizzle. An almost indiscernible sound could be heard, causing Suyu to be overjoyed. The terrifying milky white air current had been slightly melted by the flames. However, it was only slightly. The remaining milky white flames were about to reach Suyu's heart. At this critical moment, Suyu heaved a sigh of relief. It turned out that the thing that could restrain it was flames. Without thinking, Suyu immediately took out the Red Lotus incredible umbrella and took out a wisp of furious Red Lotus flames. This flame was so powerful that it could easily turn a grade 1 fairy into ashes. It was many times more powerful than the flames of the origin. Indeed, once the furious Red Lotus flames entered his body, the milky white air current quickly disappeared like snow melting in spring. Soon, the milky white air current that was wreaking havoc in Suyu's body disappeared without a trace. Suyu's life was no longer in danger. Suyu let out a breath of relief and wiped the sweat off his forehead. He had gone through many trials and tribulations, but he had never thought that he would be nearly killed by a spiritual creature. No wonder Yin Yazi said that I would definitely die if I swallowed it directly. Just a strand of its hair contained a tiny amount of poison, yet it almost took my life. If I had swallowed the entire cloud galloping horse, Even using all of my furious red lotus flames would not have been of any use. After experiencing such a dangerous situation, Suyu took the cloud, galloping horse in his hand seriously. I must deal with it carefully. Suyu carefully grabbed a ball of furious red lotus flames and wondered if he should first burn the extremely dangerous strand of hair to prevent a similar crisis from occurring again. However, as he held the flames in his hand, Suyu's eyes suddenly flickered. It would be a pity to destroy such a powerful poison. If I could use it, it might become a good trump card. Suyu's eyes shone brightly as he carefully cut off all of the hair strand by strand, then carefully sealed them up. There were more than 300 strands of hair. After cutting off all of the cloud, galloping horse's hair, Suyu revealed a mysterious smile. Now, this is the part one I'm most looking forward to. As Suyu held the cloud, galloping horse in his hand, a spinning Milky Way gradually appeared on his palm. The vast stars were like specks of sand, dreamy and beautiful. Threads of white liquid could be seen being drawn into the Milky Way star sand within the cloud galloping horse's body. The cloud galloping horse's body gradually became transparent, and it looked like a perfect piece of unpolished jade. After a long while, the Milky Way star sand disappeared, and the cloud galloping horse lay on Suyu's palm. When he used his soul eyes to examine the cloud galloping horse's body, he discovered that not only was the white liquid completely gone, even the other impurities had disappeared. Just like that, the poison, which required many precious materials to neutralize, was purified by the Milky Way star sand. As Suyu once again experienced the magical effects of the Emperor Base Saint artifact, the Milky Way star sand, Suyu realized how precious and useful the legacy left behind by Tianjizi was. At this moment, the pure and flawless cloud, galloping horse, didn't pose any threat to him anymore. All it had was the pure energy that even fairy realm experts would drool over. Without any hesitation, Suyu could no longer suppress the anticipation in his heart. He raised his head and swallowed it. At once, a wave of scorching, warm energy flowed from his mouth to his throat. The scorching sensation caused Suyu's face to turn red, and he coughed continuously. The taste couldn't even be described as wonderful. 15 minutes later, the burning sensation was still reverberating in his mouth and throat. At the same time, it continued to spread to his abdomen. Suyu felt as if there was a raging flame burning in his abdomen, which made him feel extremely uncomfortable. However, it was also at this moment that the scorching energy entered his dantian. There were 4 crystals in Suyu's dantian. 2 of them had already been successfully compressed into vital energy crystals. One was a thunder crystal, which had appeared out of nowhere, and the last one was a spiritual energy crystal, which had yet to be condensed into a vital energy crystal. After the scorching energy entered his abdomen, it immediately engulfed the 4 crystals. The intense scorching color caused the 4 crystals to undergo different changes. They all released their energy to resist the invasion of the scorching energy. Among them, the vital energy crystal released vital energy, the thunder crystal released lightning, and the spiritual energy crystal released spiritual energy. The vital energy and lightning had great resistance against the invasion of the scorching energy, and they kept it out of the crystal. However, the spiritual energy was the weakest, and it couldn't resist the invasion of the scorching energy. In just a short moment, 1/10 of the spiritual energy crystal had turned into a fiery red color. It had been occupied by the scorching energy, which was still invading it unceasingly. The space within the spiritual energy crystal was continuously being occupied and compressed. All of a sudden, a tiny bit of weak vital energy was born. It was a brand new energy that had been compressed to the extreme. With the continuous compression of the scorching energy, the amount of mutated spiritual energy increased, and more vital energy appeared. After an hour, 1/3 of the spiritual energy crystal had mutated into a vital energy crystal. However, this wasn't enough. The spiritual energy crystal started absorbing the external spiritual energy crazily to fill the empty space. Just like that, A large amount of the spiritual energy within a mile of Suyu's body was being absorbed. The spiritual energy crystal in his body was rapidly mutating into a vital energy crystal. The whole process lasted for half a day. Half a day later, Suyu's eyes were still closed, but his face was filled with a carefree smile. Boundless vital energy was rolling around his body. It was like a great flood, and an invisible pressure that could oppress people's hearts could be felt. The spiritual energy has disappeared, and only vital energy is left in my body. Feeling the drastic change in his dantian, Suyu felt like he had been reborn. Now that his vital energy was 30% stronger, the power of the techniques and treasures he used would increase again. Now that he was facing a grade 4 fairy, even if he couldn't defeat him, he could still escape. In such a chaotic situation, he finally had a way to save his life. As he slowly opened his eyes, 2 vital energy waves could be seen. As expected of the cloud galloping horse, its effects are still there. Suyu smiled and clicked his tongue in amazement. He had already broken through to the 3 crystals half-fairy realm and was only a step away from the fairy realm. However, the scorching energy was still in his dantian, stimulating the 3 vital energy crystals to compress. As such, the vital energy was being compressed to become purer. Once it reached a certain critical point, the vital energy crystals would mutate, and that would be the day he would break through to the fairy realm. As he clenched his fists and felt his unprecedented power, Suyu's confidence soared. It's a pity that there aren't many spiritual creatures like the cloud galloping horse in the Jinlong continent. Otherwise, we would be able to quickly create a group of experts. Suyu sighed inwardly. As he stood up, Suyu flicked his sleeves and looked in the direction of the Empire of Darkness headquarters. It's time to go to the Empire of Darkness. The King of Darkness was a mysterious and unfathomable peerless ruler. He was the 7 Lords Palace's elder generation's 7 Lords of Darkness. After experiencing the drastic change in the world's spiritual energy 3 years ago, did they manage to break through their shackles and reach an astonishing cultivation level. Chief Inspector Bai Chong had the power of a grade 1 fairy. Chapter 660. The drastic change 3 years ago had brought disaster to the Jinlong continent, but it had also created a batch of fairy realm fighters due to the increase in spirit energy. For example, Bai Chong. Suyu had never heard of any fairy realm fighters in the Jinlong continent. Now that a governor had such abilities, it was obvious that Bai Chong was not the only fairy realm fighter. Suyu had no choice but to be cautious. It was best to keep a low profile on this trip to the Empire of Darkness. After thinking for a moment, Suyu took out a set of returning Principal Palace clothing. It was white and simple. If one did not recognize the symbol of the returning Principal Palace on the chest, it would be very ordinary and would not attract attention. After doing this, Suyu's body flickered with lightning as he left using Thunder Escape. Half a day later, in the Middle Continent, at the top of a majestic mountain peak, lightning flashed, and a figure covered in surging lightning bolts stepped out. Empire of Darkness, we meet again. Suyu looked at the horizon, at the giant mountain peak that pierced through the clouds and connected heaven and earth. He was filled with emotion. In the past, he had been captured by the Divine Eagle. Now, he was also the leader of an ancient force. That giant mountain was the continent's #1 peak, located in the center of the Jinlong continent. It had been occupied by the Empire of Darkness since ancient times, and it was their headquarters. This peak was the symbol of the Empire of Darkness. But now this peak was surrounded by a large number of soldiers. Scanning the surroundings with his soul eyes, Suyu saw that there was an army of 800 soldiers around the peak. Every one of them was at least a half-fairy. There were 10 grade 1 fairy inspectors, and there were countless 3 crystals half-fairies. It could be said that more than half of the otherworldly forces on the continent were gathered here. Seeing this, Suyu could not help but shudder. It was rumored that the Empire of Darkness was surrounded by the otherworldly army. Not only was the news true, it was even more serious. There were 800 fairies, almost half of the invaders' forces. If the forces that had attacked the Heavenly Law Alliance and the Outpost had been half as strong, the 2 factions would have long been annihilated. Under the heavy encirclement, anyone from the Empire of Darkness would be targeted. Hence, the giant mountain peak looked dead silent, with no signs of human activity. But the strange thing was that the chief inspector, Bai Chong, was outside the Empire of Darkness and was being chased by an enemy inspector. It was unbelievable. How did Bai Chong escape? With his strength, it was impossible for him to break through the blockade of 800 experts and escape. What puzzled Suyu even more was that Elder Gio had once said that the Empire of Darkness possessed the power to expel all otherworldly experts. So, why would they rather be surrounded than take any action? Or were they plotting? Filled with doubts, Suyu fixed his gaze on the giant peak. This peak was surrounded by a magnificent city. It was more majestic than any other city on the continent, and its surface area was extremely vast. But now, it was occupied by otherworldly experts and became an enemy zone. If nothing unexpected happened, the people in the city had all moved to the mountain peak. Through his transparent eyes, he could see that the interior of the mountain was extremely spacious. It was a grand hollow mountain. Just as he had expected, the hollow mountain peak was filled with people of all races. There were all kinds of shops, and it was no different from a city. Even though it was a chaotic world, people's daily activities didn't stop. Instead, they continued to trade. Because of the impending war, people were panicking. In order to find things they needed to increase their strength, trade became more and more prosperous. Suyu nodded slightly. He wondered whether the 2 elixirs that could save Phoenix Master Chio's life were among the items that had been traded. Next, he had to figure out how to enter the mountain peak. After pondering it for a moment, Suyu made up his mind. There were many otherworldly experts, and if they gathered together, they would be quite terrifying. Even Suyu couldn't fight against 800 of them by himself. However, numbers could sometimes be a weakness. Suyu could rely on his magical treasures to pass through the encirclement alone. His only doubt was the Empire of Darkness's giant peak. Since this peak could stand tall for 3 years despite being surrounded by the otherworldly army, and the otherworldly army still couldn't break through it, it was obvious that this peak had some means of isolating outsiders. If Suyu charged to the foot of the mountain and was refused entry, it would become the most dangerous thing to do. Suyu stroked his chin as he fell into deep thought. All of a sudden, Suyu raised his brows. He could faintly detect a ripple of an aura. It was as if a living creature had suddenly appeared and disappeared. The ripple was very weak, and it was similar to the appearance of an ordinary wild beast. If this was an ordinary place, Suyu might have ignored it. However, in such a dangerous place, he couldn't afford to be careless. His eyes were dim, but they shone with a strange radiance. Soul energy slowly seeped out his eyes, passing through all the obstacles behind him. After passing through several messy mountain rocks, Suyu finally found the source of the ripple. It was 3 carefully hidden figures, 2 men and a woman. Among the 2 men, one was a middle-aged man, while the other was a young man. The middle-aged man looked ordinary and inconspicuous. He was the type of person who wouldn't be noticed even if he was thrown into a crowd. The same was true for the young man. His appearance was very ordinary and inconspicuous. As for the woman, she looked pretty good. She was in her early 20s and had a petite figure. Her face was very delicate, like a porcelain doll's. She had long hair that was half a moon's length, and her bangs covered her forehead, revealing a pair of big, lively eyes. On top of her head, there was a bright pink wildflower, which added to her liveliness. However, there was a tinge of arrogance in her expression. "Father, why aren't we leaving? Don't we have the invisibility charm? Can't we return to the Empire directly?" The arrogant girl complained. The young man beside her chuckled and said, "Linger, the clan master is observing the enemy. Although we have the invisibility charm, we can't be careless." "I didn't ask you. Don't talk too much." Linger rolled her eyes and glanced at him. The young man laughed awkwardly. He didn't look angry at all. Instead, he looked at Linger with even more affection. "Linger, don't be rude to Ing Chung." The middle-aged man, who was the clan master, scolded her in a low voice. "Ing Chung is right. Don't be careless." Linger pouted and said, "Father, you don't love me. However, The middle-aged man's tone suddenly changed, and his tone became serious. However, I'm not observing the enemy. I am observing someone else. His deep gaze instantly sharpened. Who was the clan master talking about? Ing Chung was shocked. He knew that the clan master was a peak 3 crystals half-fairy realm expert, and he could easily escape from the enemy's encirclement. However, the clan master was being so cautious. Who is it? Where is it? Linger opened her mouth wide and looked around with her big eyes. The middle-aged clan master said in a deep voice, "Didn't you notice that there's a person on that mountain? Moreover, he has been here for a while, but I only noticed him now." Mountain? Ing Chung and Linger were both surprised, and Linger asked curiously, "Father, why didn't we feel any fluctuations of his aura? My aura observing technique isn't any weaker than yours." As she spoke, Linger stuck her head out from behind the rock and looked at the mountain. She was shocked and said, there is really a person." Her mouth was covered by the middle-aged clan master, who lowered his voice and said, "Sure." Linger was shocked and asked, "Father, who is that person? Why didn't my aura observing technique sense anything even though he was there?" The aura observing technique is an immortal level cultivation technique, and it can detect any changes in aura within a 1-mile radius. A person's body naturally emits an aura, so it can be easily detected. So, why didn't I sense any changes in his aura when he came here? Linger asked in surprise. Ing Chung was also alarmed and asked, "Clan Master, what is going on?" The middle-aged clan master said in a deep voice, "Isn't it simple? There are only 2 possibilities. First, his strength is far above ours. Although the aura observing technique can detect any changes in aura within a 1-mile radius, if that person's strength is higher than ours, our senses will be affected under the spiritual pressure, and we won't be able to detect his presence. Second, he is proficient in some kind of secret technique that allows him to hide his aura. Even the aura observing technique can't detect him. This kind of cultivation technique is most likely an immortal level cultivation technique." As he said this, Ing Chung and Linger heaved a sigh of relief. "Father, I saw him from afar. He is about the same age as us, so how could his strength be stronger than yours? There is no need to ask. This kid must be proficient in some kind of secret technique that allows him to hide his aura. It might not be a cultivation technique, but it is possible that he swallowed some elixirs." However, the middle-aged clan master warned her again. "Linger, how many times have I told you not to judge a book by its cover? Age doesn't decide everything. There are many young experts in the otherworldly world. There are many otherworldly people who are stronger than you." After Linger was scolded, she pouted her lips and became unhappy. When Ing Chung saw this, he shifted his gaze and pretended to be deep in thought. "Clan Master, I think what Linger said makes sense. This person is just like us, standing sneakily outside the encirclement. He is most likely not someone from the otherworldly world, but someone from our continent. Moreover, we have never heard of a powerful expert from our continent's younger generation that is more powerful than you. Even our new generation's 7 Lords of Darkness didn't reach such a level, right?" What he said made sense. There were many talented experts in the Jinlong continent, but none of them had reached the 3 crystals half-fairy realm. However, the middle-aged clan master shook his head and said, "That might not be the case. The 3 of us have already been out on a mission for 3 months. Did you forget about the legend of the Heavenly Law Alliance's master so quickly? The Heavenly Law Alliance's master is an existence who can easily kill a level 3 fairy realm expert. Do you not know about his identity as Inu? Inu. His name was like a sudden clap of thunder, which immediately caused them to feel deep veneration. He can't be counted." Ing Chung was embarrassed, and he couldn't hide the respect in his eyes. If the rumors are true, then he is already a legendary figure who stands at the peak of the Jinlong continent. He is comparable to our King of Darkness. How can we, who are in the same generation as him, compare ourselves to him? Ing Chung was a level 2 fairy realm youth, so he could be considered one of the top geniuses in the Jinlong continent. Chapter 661. To be born in the same era as this guy is a tragedy for all of us. Ing Chung smiled bitterly and shrugged his shoulders helplessly. As long as Su Yu's shadow shrouded the entire Jinlong continent, his peers would never be able to stand out. Unexpectedly, Ling Er, who was at the side, curled her lips in disdain. Look at you. You have no fighting spirit at all. No wonder you could not reach Su Yu's level. Do you know that Su Yu had only stepped into the Jinlong continent 4 years ago? Do you know that 4 years ago, when we were all Saint Kings, he was still the lowest level of martial artists? Even 3 years ago, we weren't any weaker than him. So, how did Su Yu get to where he was now, one step at a time? The 100 Territories Alliance fought against the heroes. The Dynasty Branch defeated the 10 Great Region Masters. The Phoenix Cabinet created their own world's edge for the person they loved, defeated all the geniuses of the North Continent, and became the #1 genius of the North Continent. He then added, now that I have returned to the continent, I will use the Black Snow Devil King's body as Su Yu's. Then, I will use the power of a single person to turn the tide and lead the Heavenly Law Alliance to the continent's first great victory. Then, I will kill several hundred otherworldly half-fairies, as well as a grade 3 half-fairy with just a single strike. Then, I will be able to recover the Jinlong continent's first territory. His achievements are the result of his hard work. As a man, to be able to reach this step, he can die without regrets. He is not like you, who only knows how to complain and be jealous. At the mention of Su Yu, Lingers seemed to have turned into a chatterbox. She started chattering incessantly. Ing Chung was embarrassed and had nothing to say. The middle-aged hall master smiled helplessly. I've never seen you put so much effort into a mission. Yet, you actually managed to find out everything about the Heavenly Law Alliance's Alliance Master. Furthermore, you've already repeated his deeds more than 3 times, to the point that my ears are about to grow calluses. Ling Er's face turned slightly red when she heard this, and she glared angrily. Father, what nonsense are you talking about? I'm just doing my duty as an intelligence agent to find out more about the Heavenly Law Alliance Master. I don't have any other intentions. The middle-aged hall master smiled meaningfully. I didn't say that Linger had other intentions. Why are you so anxious? Hearing this, Ing Cheng's face darkened. As an intelligence officer, his ability to read people's thoughts and body language was naturally higher than that of an ordinary person. He could sense that something was amiss from Ling Er's eagerness to investigate the Heavenly Law Alliance's Alliance Master. Now that the Hall Master reminded him, he immediately came to a realization. Ling Er was probably interested in the Heavenly Law Alliance Master. Although Ing Chung was jealous, there was nothing he could do. It was rumored that the Heavenly Law Alliance's master, Su Yu, was not only extremely powerful, but he was also extremely young and handsome. Moreover, he was also a person who valued relationships and was perfect in all aspects. Now that he had achieved a great victory in the continent, he was undoubtedly a great hero who had saved Jinlong. Which young girl would not look forward to such a person and not admire him? Father, I'm going to get angry if you talk nonsense again. Ling Er's face turned red as she glared at him angrily. The middle-aged hall master found it funny and said, Okay, I won't say any more. In any case, it was impossible for them to have any interaction with such a legendary figure. Even if his daughter really had feelings for him, there was nothing he could do. Not good. That person is coming towards us. The middle-aged hall master's expression suddenly changed. Ling Er, who was embarrassed and angry, immediately found a place to vent. She stood up with a whoosh and said angrily, I'll fight him. She was a 1 crystal half-fairy, so she could be considered an upper-class genius. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been entrusted with such a heavy responsibility by the Empire and entered the ranks of the intelligence agency. Later, the middle-aged hall master hurriedly shouted at her to stop, but it was already too late. He could only helplessly leap forward and protect Ling Er. Ing Chung also stepped forward and examined the youth in front of him. Apart from his excessively handsome face and his simple white clothes, he didn't seem to be anything special about him. Father, let me deal with him. You can judge whether he's an otherworldly person or not. After Ling Er spoke, she angrily charged forward. Years flow like water. As Ling pointed her finger at him, 3 water lotuses appeared above her head. Their petals then spun around and shot towards Suyu. Suyu was somewhat helpless, as he wasn't clear about their identities. However, he could still discern that they weren't otherworldly people. He had just come over to greet them and ask them about the matter of entering the giant peak. However, he didn't expect that a beautiful girl would suddenly rush forward and throw a cultivation technique at him. Since Suyu was aware that it was just a misunderstanding, he wouldn't deal a heavy blow to her. A water-type cultivation technique? Suyu muttered inwardly. It was far inferior to Xia Jingyu's. Xia Jingyu was proficient in several hundred water-type cultivation techniques, and most of them were more advanced than years flow like water. It's not bad. Suyu chuckled and suppressed his cultivation on purpose. He then released the level 1 fairy realm's vital energy and turned it into a shield in front of him. Splutter. When the petals hit the shield, a muffled sound echoed out as they shattered and turned into numerous raindrops. It seemed like rain was falling on a lotus. It seemed like Suyu had easily blocked it. However, Ling Er's eyes were filled with craftiness. Humph, do you think that my immortal level cultivation technique is so easy to block? Oh, Suyu was surprised. It was at this moment that many threads, which couldn't be seen by the naked eye, appeared among the shattered petals. These threads connected all of the raindrops together. In other words, the raindrops were just used to deceive people, while the true power of the technique lay in the hidden threads. The silk threads unknowingly dispersed and formed a large net. By the time Suyu came to his senses, the net had already taken shape and caught him by surprise. All of a sudden, Suyu was like a turtle trapped in a jar. Just after this, Ling flew over and took out a small green sword from her waist. She then placed it against Suyu's neck and said proudly, "Hey, didn't I tell you? You're just a lad trying to scare people. You are so weak, yet you still dare to come here and scare me." So he didn't know whether he should laugh or cry. This net was made of vital energy, and its power depended on the purity of Ling Er's spiritual energy. With his cultivation, he could easily shatter the net at any time if he wanted to. He just didn't want any more misunderstandings to occur, so he just sat there and waited for his death. Suyu was left speechless by the little beauty's words, but he couldn't help but laugh. He wasn't just trying to scare them. They were just hiding somewhere, and Suyu hadn't noticed them before he had descended on the mountain. "Hall Master, how is it?" When Ing Chung saw that Suyu had been easily subdued by Ling he couldn't help but relax. At this moment, the middle-aged Hall Master was holding a white jade plate in his hand. A dark red color could be faintly seen on it, and it was flickering. There's a reaction, which means that he's an otherworldly person. Linga, let him go. The middle-aged Hall Master put away the jade plate and examined Suyu. Ling clenched her hand and collected the net. She then curled her lips and said, "Lad, you should properly cultivate your power. The continent is quite chaotic now, and if you're discovered by the otherworldly experts with your meager power, you will surely meet the King of Hell." Suyu cupped his fists at her with a faint smile and said, "I will bear in mind your advice." Linger rolled her eyes at him and said, "You still have the face to smile? Really, you're just another guy with no ambition." Linger shook her head. She didn't want to look at Suyu anymore. "Little brother, please forgive me for offending you." The middle-aged Hall Master cupped his fists at him and apologized. "It's fine, I understand." Suyu waved his hand at him and smiled. The middle-aged Hall Master's eyes flickered. "Little brother, may I know what you are doing here? The otherworldly army is in front of us, and if you're discovered and recognized as a member of the Empire of Darkness, your end will be quite dangerous. In the past 3 years, all of the Empire of Darkness's people who fell into the otherworldly realm were tortured to death. If the otherworldly people wanted to invade the Empire of Darkness, they could only interrogate the captives. The other faction's captives might not be in any danger, but the captives here were in grave danger." Suyu's eyes flickered as he wondered, why does this person know so much about the Empire of Darkness's situation? It seems like he's most likely a member of the Empire of Darkness. Moreover, since he was hiding here, it was likely that he wanted to return to the Empire of Darkness. If he followed them, it wouldn't be difficult for him to enter the giant peak. I escaped from the Northern Continent's 100 Territories Alliance, and I sought shelter with a distant relative of the Empire of Darkness. I didn't expect that the Empire of Darkness's situation would be so grave, and I wanted to enter it, but I didn't have any way to do so. So you made up a lie. Upon hearing this, the middle-aged Hall Master sighed and said, "So, you escaped from the Northern Continent. It's no wonder that you didn't know how dangerous it is to come here." Although he said this, his eyes flickered. It was obvious that he didn't believe Su Yu's words. "Little brother, you should quickly leave this place. This place is too dangerous, so you shouldn't stay here for long." The middle-aged Hall Master cupped his fists at Su Yu and bid him farewell. He then waved his hand at Linger and Ying Cheng to follow him. Su Yu thought to himself, "Are they really on guard against me? They are really vigilant, as I have already suppressed my cultivation and lowered my threat level to the lowest possible level." As Su Yu looked at them leaving, he wondered, how can I sneak into their group? After the middle-aged Hall Master had walked 1,000 meters away, Ying Cheng's eyes lit up, and he said, "Hall Master, it seems like this lad wants to follow us into the Empire of Darkness." Linger blinked her eyes and snorted. "Umph, it turns out that this lad still has such an idea in mind." The middle-aged Hall Master nodded slightly. "Yes, I heard it clearly, so I will take you and leave immediately. Although he doesn't pose any threat to us, if we rashly bring him back to the Empire of Darkness's giant peak, and if he turns out to be an otherworldly spy, we won't be able to bear such a responsibility." Ying Cheng agreed with him, then said, "Spies bribed by the otherworldly world aren't anything new, so it's better for us to avoid unnecessary trouble." Since all three of them had such thoughts, Su Yu's plan had failed. "Wait, don't go any further." All of a sudden, the middle-aged Hall Master came to a stop, while his expression changed drastically. A faintly discernible aura, which was visible to the naked eye, had entered his nostrils. Linger and Ying Cheng immediately started weaving signs with their hands, while a similar scene occurred. It seemed like they were able to absorb the unique aura in the air through their noses. "It's awful. We have been discovered by someone, and a group of otherworldly experts is rushing over. Quickly run." The middle-aged Hall Master made a prompt decision, then turned around and fled. Linger and Ying Cheng's expressions also changed drastically. They were intelligence agents, and such a situation was common, so they both reacted quickly. The direction in which the three of them were fleeing happened to be where Su Yu was. "Ying Cheng, take him with you," the middle-aged Hall Master shouted in a deep voice. Ying Cheng was quite displeased by this, as bringing along a burden at such a critical moment was really bad. However, since the Hall Master had given him an order, he didn't dare to just leave Su Yu here to die. So he grabbed Su Yu's shoulder and said, "If you don't want to die, then don't move." Chapter 662. Their cultivations were not very high, but their movement techniques had been specially trained, so they were extremely fast, at least one level higher than their peers. In the blink of an eye, Su Yu had been brought hundreds of miles away by them, leaving the people who were chasing after him behind. After flying for a while and confirming that it was safe, the three of them landed by a lake. "Let's stop. We should be safe now." The middle-aged Hall Master led everyone to stop and rest by the lake. Whoosh! Both Linger and Ying Cheng were a little tired. Although their movement techniques were fast, they had consumed a lot of energy. "Father, what's going on? How did the otherworldly people know of our existence? Could it be that we have been exposed?" Linger was very confused. The enemy had pounced on them so precisely, which meant that they knew exactly where they were. If not for their amazing senses, they would have been killed by now. The middle-aged Hall Master was lost in thought and did not reply. "Do you still need to ask? We've been hiding so well, so how could our location have been exposed? Apart from a reckless person who stood on the mountain, there is no other possibility." Ying Cheng put Su Yu down and looked at him with dissatisfaction. Linger came to her senses and angrily turned her head to glare at Su Yu. "I was wondering why it was you." Su Yu had stood on the mountain without concealing himself. Although they were quite far away, there was no guarantee that the otherworldly people were not proficient in vision techniques. It was very likely that Suyu had exposed himself and implicated them. Suyu was left speechless by this. Indeed, he didn't try to hide himself like the others, but his whole body was emitting a natural aura, and he had merged with his surroundings. Even if the otherworldly people saw him, they would just treat him as a natural scenery, and they wouldn't notice him. This was also why the three of them had not detected Suyu's aura, even though they were so close. Therefore, it was not Suyu who had been exposed. It's not him. The middle-aged hall master shook his head without hesitation. With his ability to conceal his aura, we could not even detect his existence at such a close distance, let alone the enemy who was hundreds of miles away. It must be our own fault. The one who was implicated is this little brother. The middle-aged hall master cupped his fists. I'm sorry, little brother. I've implicated you. I think our whereabouts have probably been exposed by the enemy. Linger glanced at Suyu suspiciously. She didn't believe that she would be exposed. Clan leader, this is a top-secret mission arranged by the Seven Lords' Palace. Only the Seven Lords' Palace knows our whereabouts. Even if the Empire of Darkness has a spy, it is impossible for them to know our exact location. Could it be that the spy is in the Seven Lords' Palace? I think the biggest problem is still this kid. Ingqing squinted his eyes and stared at Suyu, not hiding his suspicion. In the face of their doubtful gazes, Suyu shrugged his shoulders and looked around vigilantly. All of a sudden, he raised his brows and said, I'm afraid that now is not the time to discuss whether I am a traitor or not. Humph. Don't try to change the topic. You are the traitor. Ingqing seemed to have seen through Suyu's inner thoughts, and as he touched the dagger at his waist, his murderous aura gradually revealed itself. Stop. Suddenly, the middle-aged hall master's tone turned solemn. He shouted in a low voice, his complexion somewhat unsightly. He's right. We don't have time to waste. We're surrounded. Surround? When? Both Linger and Ingqing were shocked. How could the enemy have caught up with them so quickly and surrounded them? The two of them immediately used their aura-observing techniques. Wisps of faintly discernible auras entered their noses intermittently. After a long while, both of their expressions became unsightly. Oh no, we're really surrounded. Judging from a number of auras, there are at least 30 people, all of whom are 2 crystals half-fairy realm. No, it seems like there are even 3 crystals half-fairy realm auras scattered in all directions. This is a well-planned ambush. Ingqing's expression changed drastically. At this moment, Suyu's suspicions had been cleared. Such an ambush was obviously well-planned. Moreover, Suyu had only known them for a short while. Don't say anything else. Quickly escape with him. The middle-aged hall master's expression became gloomy as he looked in the direction where the enemy seemed to be the weakest. Ingqing's expression became gloomy. Clan leader, we can't even protect ourselves, let alone bring him along. Linger was also very hesitant. They had fallen into an ambush, and they really didn't have the strength to protect another person. There were 32 crystals half-fairy realm experts, as well as a 3 crystals half-fairy realm expert in hiding. Even if they were entangled by just one of the 2 crystals half-fairy realm experts for a short while, they would all be annihilated. Shut up. He was implicated by us, so how could we abandon him? Bring him along and set off immediately. The middle-aged hall master reprimanded them as he tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and flew away. Ingqing clenched his teeth and glared at Suyu with hatred. Behave yourself. If you dare to affect me in the slightest, I will kill you immediately. After he finished speaking, he grabbed Suyu and fled after the middle-aged hall master. After they had flown for 10 miles, they saw some indistinct figures hidden among the dense clouds. Their ambush was unimaginable. It was as if they had been able to accurately pinpoint their exact location, which was why they had been able to perfectly surround them. Fortunately, the 3 of them, especially the middle-aged hall master's aura-observing technique, were able to detect the enemy's weak points. There were 3 2 crystals half-fairy realm experts blocking their way. With the middle-aged hall master, a 3 crystals half-fairy realm expert, they could easily break through their defenses. Open! The middle-aged hall master shouted loudly. His loud and clear voice contained a boundless power that could paralyze one's body. It was a sound wave cultivation technique. The dense clouds dispersed, revealing the 3 figures hidden within. Under the influence of the sound wave cultivation technique, the 3 of them became stiff. Now, the middle-aged hall master led Su Yu and the others through the encirclement and into the boundless sky. Swoosh! At that moment, the encirclement shrank rapidly. A young scholar wearing a white robe had an angry look on his face. They still managed to escape. He was bewildered. What's going on? How did they suddenly detect the ambush? Did something happen? Sir, there's something that I don't know whether I should say or not. His confidant, who was standing behind him, revealed a puzzled look. Speak. The white-robed scholar was furious and replied with a displeased expression. The confidant pondered for a moment before asking, Sir, did you notice that silver-haired youth? Silver-haired youth? Which one? The white-robed scholar furrowed his brows. His attention had been focused on the 3 important people, so he hadn't paid attention to the silver-haired youth. The confidant carefully looked at the white-robed scholar's expression, then said in an uncertain tone, I don't know if it's just my imagination, but why do I feel like that silver-haired youth is somewhat familiar? It seems like he is similar to the rumored Zhenlong genius of the Central Prefecture's Black Shadow Guards. Suyu? They have the same silver-haired youth, the same age, and the same appearance. However, this person is a mysterious existence who can compete with a divine master. So, how could he be with 3 insignificant people? Unknowingly, the expression of the white-robed scholar had changed from impatience to solemnity. The speaker didn't mean it, but the listener did. Chapter 663. The confidant wasn't the only one who had noticed the silver-haired youth. You were the only one who misjudged him, but not everyone else, the white-robed scholar said in a deep voice. The white-robed scholar said in a low voice. He could sense the changes in the expressions of the people around him. His heart fiercely pounded, and a fine layer of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. Su Yu's name was quite famous among the Black Shadow Guards, and the battle prowess displayed by this mysterious genius of the Zhenlong continent was really frightening. As he recalled how he had almost surrounded this terrifying existence, his heart couldn't help but pound. At this moment, he finally understood why their ambush had been so easily seen through. It was all because of the existence of this mysterious genius. Sir, there is one more thing. When I used my eye technique to observe just now, it seems like this silver-haired youth listens to those 3 nobodies. Is he really the person in the rumors? The confidant voiced his doubts once again. The corners of the white-robed scholar's mouth twitched. I'm afraid that he didn't reveal his identity, and that's why those 3 nobodies dared to be so impudent. I really don't know what will happen to them if they offend this guy. Sir, should we continue to chase after him? The confidant also felt like he had just escaped from the gates of hell, so he braced himself and asked. The white-robed scholar glared at him. Are you going to chase after him, or should I? The confidant was embarrassed, but he understood tacitly. Then, what did you see just now? The white-robed scholar's eyes flickered with a cold light. If news of him letting the target escape was spread, the higher-ups wouldn't ask why, but would punish him directly. The confidant rolled his eyes. The target was rescued by someone, and we didn't catch up with him. Who rescued him? The white-robed scholar asked coldly. The confidant replied seriously, we didn't see it. At this moment, the white-robed scholar revealed a faint smile. That's a good answer. The rest of you should know how to answer, right? Yes, sir. The rest of the people replied. They also didn't want to be accused of letting the enemy escape, so they naturally knew what to do. Good, retreat. Go back and report. The white-robed scholar waved his hand. Not only did he not chase after them, but he also led his people to quickly retreat. The middle-aged hall master and the other 2 people, who hadn't flown far, couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Father, did I see it wrong? They unexpectedly retreated. Linger's eyes were as wide as saucers, and her face was filled with disbelief. Yingxing also felt that it was unbelievable. What happened to the enemy? Why did they suddenly retreat? In fact, it wasn't just them. Even the middle-aged hall master found this inconceivable. Strange, could it be that the enemy's target isn't us? So they gave up on chasing us? The three of them were already prepared to flee for their lives, but the enemy had actually retreated so easily. How strange. Don't be careless. Let's leave this place first, the middle-aged hall master said vigilantly. 2 hours. In a quiet forest far away from the Empire of Darkness. As night fell, a group of people gathered around the bonfire and roasted a few small mountain beasts. The fragrance refreshed the mind and greatly increased one's appetite. Our luck is really good today. Nibbling on the delicious food, Ling Er's face was filled with joy and satisfaction. To be able to escape from that kind of encirclement was truly a blessing from the heavens. It's Ling Er who brought us good luck. Ingchen cut off a deer's leg and handed it to Ling. Ling Er shook the wild boar hoof in her hand, which she had not finished eating, to show her refusal. Isn't that so? As long as I'm here, I guarantee that you'll be safe. Don't you think so, father? However, Ling Er discovered that the middle-aged hall master's brows were furrowed, and he was looking at the bonfire, lost in his thoughts. Father, what are you thinking about? Ling Er interrupted the middle-aged hall master's thoughts. When the middle-aged hall master came back to his senses, he furrowed his brows and said, I'm thinking about how we should return to the Empire of Darkness. Judging from today's situation, we should have already been targeted by the otherworldly army. If we want to go back, it will be more dangerous than usual. When he said this, Ling Er and Ing Cheng's relaxed mood became heavy. They had managed to escape, but it would be extremely difficult for them to return to the Empire of Darkness. Sigh, the wild boar hoof in Ling Er's mouth instantly became tasteless, and she furrowed her brows. She was quite vexed. Among the three of them, only Suyu wore a calm expression. He was leaning against a tree, meditating and cultivating. When the middle-aged hall master saw this, he couldn't help but praise him inwardly. Even in such a situation, he still had the heart to cultivate. Moreover, he still had a calm temperament, and he was also quite hardworking. However, in the eyes of the vexed Linger, it was a different feeling. Hey, can't you think of a solution? Don't you think that it's selfish of you to only care about your own cultivation? Linger was quite merciless. Suyu slowly opened his eyes. He had been taking some time to consolidate his 3 crystals half-fairy realm cultivation. When he heard Ling Er's shout, he stopped cultivating and said with a faint smile, While I was cultivating, you were also eating. So, why am I being selfish? Aren't you the same? Ling Er had just wanted to vent her anger, so she didn't expect that Suyu would dare to talk back to her. What did you just say? How can you speak like that? Before Ling Er could retort, Ing Cheng was infuriated, and he flung the deer leg in his hand at the ground. He didn't even try to hide the anger on his face. If it wasn't for us, you would have already become a corpse. So, can't you show us some respect? If I had known that you were such a person, I wouldn't have saved you. Suyu just smiled and didn't reply. His expression didn't calm Ing Cheng down. Instead, it made him even angrier. Look at your disapproving expression. Looks like I've really saved an ungrateful wretch. Now that you are safe, you can get lost. We don't want to see you ever again. Ling Er, who was beside him, furrowed her brows. She had just talked back to Suyu, which meant that Ing Cheng was trying to curry favor with him. As she looked at Ing Cheng's majestic appearance out of the corner of her eye, she curled her lips in disdain. Enough! The middle-aged hall master shouted in a deep voice. What's so impressive about shouting at someone weaker than you? If you're really capable, then go and shout at the otherworldly experts. Ing Cheng's neck shrank back as his face became hot. When he was surrounded by the otherworldly experts, his face had turned pale, and he didn't even dare to breathe loudly. So, how could he shout at them? If it wasn't for his warning, we wouldn't even have realized that we were ambushed. It's fine if you didn't thank us, but why are you mocking us? When a middle-aged hall master lost his temper, he was quite imposing, and the two of them didn't dare to retort. Little brother, please forgive them for their ignorance. The middle-aged hall master cupped his fists at Suyu. Suyu waved his hand at him and said, "You don't need to worry about them. Let's talk about proper business. Hall Master, have you thought of a way to return to the Empire of Darkness?" The middle-aged Hall Master hesitated for a moment before he replied, "I do have a way, but it's quite risky. If you aren't afraid of taking risks, then you can try it with us, but I can't guarantee you whether it will succeed or not." When he finished speaking, Linger said, "What? Father, you want to take him with you? Even in the past, it would be extremely difficult for us to pass through the enemy's blockade. Wouldn't it be even more difficult for us to take another person with us in our current situation?" Ing Chung was also strongly opposed to it, but after being reprimanded, he didn't dare to voice it out. He just glared at Suyu, as if he was implying that Suyu should get lost. Otherwise, he wouldn't be polite to him. Chapter 664. Suyu turned a deaf ear to their reactions. "Thank you for your help, Clan Master. How should I address you?" The middle-aged Hall Master slightly nodded his head. "I'm just giving you a ride as a way to repay you for what you did just now. After entering the mountain peak, we have nothing to do with each other. Furthermore, the three of us have special statuses, so it's inconvenient for us to reveal our identities. Of course, we won't ask about your identity either. After entering the city, we'll immediately part ways." Suyu couldn't have asked for more, so he happily nodded his head. "Father, are you really going to?" Linger was anxious. She couldn't tolerate Suyu at all. Ing Chung also winked at him in dissatisfaction. "I've already made up my mind." The middle-aged Hall Master glanced at the two of them and said, "We'll rest for half a day. We'll depart after nightfall." Although Linger and Ing Chung were anxious, they couldn't disobey her. They could only glare at Suyu and say, "If you dare to implicate us, I won't forgive you." In response, Suyu shrugged his shoulders and began to rest, waiting for the operation to begin. The sun was setting in the west. "All right, get ready to move. Ling, Ing Chung, check if your invisibility cloaks are intact." The middle-aged Hall Master shouted. Then he took out a transparent cloak that was as thin as a cicada's wings. Ling, and Ing Chung also took out the same cloak and carefully inspected every inch of it. "No problem. We can set off now." After confirming that there were no problems, the two of them took a deep breath and began to look nervous. The middle-aged Hall Master nodded. "All right. Once you're 30 kilometers away, immediately put on the invisibility cloak. Little brother, you can share the cloak with me for the time being." Suyu had no intention of rejecting him, so he nodded in agreement. 2 hours later, 15 miles away from the Empire of Darkness. "Ling, Ing Chung, follow me closely. If any mishap occurs, I will immediately come to your rescue." The middle-aged Hall Master transmitted his voice to them in a low voice, while he lifted his cloak and covered both him and Suyu. Ing Chung was on the far left side, while the middle-aged Hall Master was in the middle. Suyu was on the right side of the middle-aged Hall Master, while Linger was on Suyu's right side. The four of them stood shoulder to shoulder, hugging each other tightly. In the blink of an eye, the four figures disappeared into the darkness. "Bastard, stay away from this great ant." Just as he took a few steps, Ling shouted in a flirtatious manner. She was on Suyu's right side, and as they walked side by side, it was inevitable that they would bump into each other. This made her extremely sensitive and uncomfortable. Suyu shrugged his shoulders helplessly. "You're the one who's rubbing against me, aren't you? If you don't like it, you can stay away. I don't mind." Ling gritted her teeth and said fiercely, "You bastard! I'll deal with you later." How could she leave her father's side? If something happened, her father wouldn't even be able to help her in time. Suyu just smiled and didn't speak. He didn't know that Ing Cheng's gaze was ice cold. "Be quiet, let's move," the middle-aged Hall Master said in a low voice. While Ling was filled with anger, the four of them stepped out. Their true chi and spiritual chi were completely restrained, and their auras were completely restrained. Under the curtain of the night, they were as transparent as air and could not be detected at all. Therefore, they moved very slowly on foot. A distance of 30 kilometers could be covered in a few breaths, but it took 6 hours. Along the way, he was extremely cautious and alert. Finally, the giant peak was in sight, and the experts from the other world that filled the sky were right in front of them. There was an otherworldly expert hidden every 10 meters. They were either on a tree, in a stone's crevice, or in a bush. In short, they were everywhere. If they made even the slightest noise, they would surely alarm the hidden experts, which would then alarm everyone else. At that time, they would be surrounded by several hundred people, and they would be helpless. It wasn't just Ling, and Ing Chung who were nervous, but even the middle-aged hall master became nervous. So you noticed that his breathing had sped up slightly. At the same time, Ling moved closer to Su Yu and pressed her arm against his. She didn't notice anything amiss. This was a moment of life and death. The middle-aged hall master clenched his teeth and widened his eyes. He was sniffing the air unceasingly as he used his aura observation technique to observe the enemy situation. The middle-aged hall master clenched his teeth and took the first step. So you could feel that this step was extremely difficult and heavy, as if it was filled with lead. Su Yu revealed a faint smile as he followed the middle-aged hall master. Ling, and Ing Chung followed him closely. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. It seemed like they were only 2 or 3 miles away from each other, but they were like a mountain made of knives. They had to observe their surroundings vigilantly with every step they took. Creak! All of a sudden, the 3 of them stopped in their tracks and felt their blood run cold. They had just passed by a tree when an otherworldly person suddenly jumped down from it. His left foot stepped on the corner of Ling Er's cloak, causing a creaking sound to echo out. The middle-aged hall master and Ing Cheng's hearts jumped to their throats when they heard this sound. Their eyes narrowed and their expressions changed drastically. They didn't dare to move as they looked at the person who had just fallen down. Well, the person who had just fallen down was a yellow-robed, 2 crystals, half-fairy realm person. He was startled and doubtfully moved his foot away. There wasn't anything strange on the pitch-black ground. Then, he looked at the soles of his feet, but he didn't find anything strange either. Doubt appeared in his eyes as he stroked his chin. After a short while, he shook his head and looked around before he took off his pants and started watering the tree. Ling Er's face turned pale with fright, and her heart started beating crazily. Her palms were filled with sweat. Su Yu's arm, which was pressed against his arm, was completely wet. Her whole body felt weak, and she couldn't help but stretch out her arm to grab Su Yu's wrist to steady her body. It was a false alarm. The middle-aged hall master and Ing Chung were scared to death. This scare made them even more careful, and every step they took was even more difficult. After walking for 2 to 3 miles, it took them most of the night. The sky was turning white, and dawn was about to break. However, the arduous journey was finally completed, and they arrived at the foot of the mountain. Just as Su Yu had expected, there was indeed an entrance outside the mountain peak. However, there were 9 shining yellow light balls. The light ball had an extremely strong, isolating power, and Su Yu also sensed a faint, dangerous aura. He believed that if he recklessly barged into it, he would end up in a terrible state. Phew! Linger let out a long breath. We're finally safe, Linger muttered in a low voice. Suddenly, she realized that her palm had grabbed onto Su Yu's arm and had been grabbing onto him for most of the night. This discovery almost caused her to cry out in alarm. She withdrew her hand as if she had been electrocuted. Her face was flushed, and she glared at Su Yu fiercely. You took advantage of me, so you didn't know whether to laugh or to cry. Eldest miss, it was you who grabbed my hand, so you took advantage of me. No matter how you look at it, I am the one who should be taking advantage of you. Linger was driven mad. As she recalled how she had been intimate with this man for a whole night, goosebumps appeared all over her body. I will deal with you when we get back. Linger distanced herself from him and glared at Su Yu. When the middle-aged hall master heard their bickering, he shook his head helplessly. He didn't want to bother with them, so he took out an emerald ball. It seemed like this ball came from the same source as the 9 restrictions at the entrance, as their auras were quite similar. So you could tell with a single glance that this ball was the key to entering the mountain peak. Only by holding this treasure would they be able to safely enter the mountain peak without being repelled by the 9 restrictions. Moreover, if there was only one ball, then the only way for the four of them to enter at the same time was if their bodies were in close contact with each other. As expected, the middle-aged hall master held the pearl in his mouth and held Ing Cheng's arm with his left hand and Su Yu's arm with his right hand. He then gave Su Yu a meaningful glance, signaling him to hold Linger's arm. Su Yu understood what he meant, so he extended his hand and held Linger's arm. When Linger suddenly noticed that Su Yu was trying to grab her, she realized that they were about to enter the mountain peak. However, after what had just happened, she instinctively dodged him and muttered, "I don't want you to hold me. I will go behind my father." As she spoke, she started moving toward the middle-aged hall master's back. However, at such a crucial moment, "You finally found it. I have been waiting for you here for a long time." Suddenly, a cold laugh rang out from behind Linger without any warning. My feeling was not wrong. I have indeed stepped on something incredible. The middle-aged hall master and the other two people turned their heads around to look, but there was no one there. However, when they looked at the corner of Linger's cloak, their pupils couldn't help but contract as they saw that there was an obvious footprint on the corner of Linger's cloak. If Linger hadn't moved, her footprint would have fused with the ground, making it difficult to discern it. However, if she moved slightly, she would be able to clearly see it. The middle-aged hall master was really careful, but he didn't expect that their journey would take several hours longer than usual. It was already daybreak. As such, Linger's tracks were exposed. Swoosh! 3 feet behind Linger, a ripple suddenly appeared in the empty space. A transparent cloak was lifted, revealing a yellow figure. It was the yellow-robed youth, who had come down from the tree to relieve them. His cultivation was at the 2 crystals half-fairy realm. "Show yourself." After the yellow-robed youth appeared, his hand moved as fast as lightning as he tried to grab Linger. Linger was extremely shocked, and her reaction was slightly slow. Although she dodged to the side, the cloak on her body was torn off. "Ah!" Linger let out a sharp cry, her face filled with panic. She was a 1 crystal half-fairy, so how could she be a match for a 2 crystals half-fairy realm? "Oh, a little beauty at that? What a surprise." The yellow-robed youth's eyes were filled with amazement as he laughed evilly. He took a step forward with his left foot, and his demonic claw grabbed Linger's shoulder mercilessly. His eyes were filled with the impulsiveness and playfulness of a wild beast. Linger retreated in panic, but how could she possibly dodge a 2 crystals half-fairy realm's attack? Chapter 665. Linger. As his daughter's life was in danger, how could the middle-aged hall master remain calm? His body moved, and the invisibility cloak swayed along with him, revealing some traces of his body. As expected, there are still people hiding here. Just as he made his move, 2 strong gusts of wind suddenly attacked him from the side. 2 invisibility cloaks appeared 20 feet away, and 2 black figures dashed out from within. Their auras were quite strong, and they were only weaker than fairies. They were both 3 crystals half-fairies. There was still someone lying in ambush. The middle-aged hall master was startled, but he was still the intelligence division's hall master, so he reacted quickly. He immediately thrust his palms forward, and the vital energy in his palms formed a vortex, which had a strong repelling power. Bang! 2 muffled sounds echoed as the middle-aged hall master blocked the 2 palms, and the repelling power neutralized most of their attacks. "Let go!" The 2 3 crystals half-fairies shouted angrily. They were shocked to discover that the person's vital energy was quite strange. Just a moment ago, it had a strong repelling power, but now it had a strong suction power, which was holding them firmly in place. "Ing Cheng, hurry up and save Ling." The middle-aged hall master had stalled them to give Ing Cheng an opportunity to attack. Otherwise, even if the 2 3 crystals half-fairies were free, Ing Cheng wouldn't be able to deal with them. Ing Cheng was quite anxious, and when he saw the 2 3 crystals half-fairies being restrained, he was about to attack. However, he suddenly realized something and stopped. His forehead was covered with cold sweat, and his eyes were filled with fright as he looked around at the empty surroundings. Since the enemy could ambush 2 waves of people, couldn't they also ambush a 3rd wave? "Ing Cheng, what are you doing? Why aren't you attacking?" The middle-aged hall master clenched his teeth, and his face became flushed. His arms emitted a cracking sound, and it seemed like he was struggling. Ingchung looked on helplessly as Ling was about to be grabbed by the yellow-clothed youth. He was so scared that he didn't dare to take another step forward. In the end, he turned around and stood in his place, not daring to move in case someone saw through him. Ingchung, the middle-aged hall master realized that Ingchung had given up on Ling, because he wanted to protect himself. With a helpless scream, Ling Er's shoulder was grabbed by the yellow-robed youth. Little beauty, the yellow-robed young man laughed sinisterly. He exerted strength in his elbow and pulled her back. The strange thing was, even with his strength, he could not move Ling Er at all. Who is holding my wrist? Come out. The yellow-robed youth's complexion suddenly stiffened, and he shouted in a low voice. Visible to the naked eye, the markings of 5 fingers appeared on the skin of his wrist. What was holding on to him? There was no one around, which meant that this person was also invisible. Brother Ingchung, save me. Ling Er was overjoyed and cried tears of joy. However, the slightly unfamiliar voice made her smile stop abruptly. Ingchung? He doesn't seem to be ready to make a move, so I have no choice but to overestimate myself and make a move. The voice wasn't Brother Ingchung, but Suyu. Shortly after, the invisibility cloak was lifted and Suyu's figure was revealed. His long silver hair fluttered in the wind, and it covered half of his face. However, it couldn't cover his eyes, which were as deep as the starry sky, nor could it cover his inhumanly handsome face. At this moment, he had one hand behind his back, while his other hand was casually placed on the yellow-robed youth's wrist. Suyu's posture, fluttering clothes, long silver hair, and charming smile seemed to have been frozen in time at this moment. It was an extremely beautiful sight. At this moment, he gave the middle-aged hall master and the other 2 people the feeling that he was a god who had descended from the heavens. He was elegant and handsome, yet powerful and terrifying, as well as possessed boundless power. Go! As he slightly flipped his wrist, the yellow-robed youth let out a miserable howl as he was flung several hundred meters away like a ragged sack. He landed on a giant boulder. The yellow-robed youth's chest exploded, and his eyes quickly dimmed. His body went limp, and he took his last breath. The giant boulder behind him remained in a stalemate for a moment before it turned into powder, burying the corpse beneath it. A 2 crystals half-fairy realm expert had been killed with a wave of his sleeves. Everything had happened in just a few breaths' time. Everyone was startled when they witnessed such a scene. Regardless of whether they were friends or foes, they were all shocked. Linger's eyes became absent-minded as she looked at the fairy-like man with fluttering silver hair in front of her. At this moment, she really felt like he was a silver-haired fairy from the ancient legends. He was noble, mysterious, powerful, and had an extraordinary temperament. He didn't belong to the mortal world. An indescribable feeling of inferiority welled up in her heart. She wasn't the only one who felt this feeling of inferiority. Everyone could feel the peerless demeanor of a god. This person should only exist in the heavens, not in the mortal world. You? Who are you? The 3 crystals half-fairy realm expert, who was attacking the middle-aged hall master, came back to his senses and asked uneasily. Suyu clasped his hands behind his back and wore a faint smile as he glanced at the void to his right. In his eyes, a level 1 fairy realm expert, who had been lying in ambush, seemed to have recognized Suyu and fled for his life. Even the inspector has fled, so why are you still here? Suyu clasped his hands behind his back and walked toward them as if he was taking a stroll in the park. As he moved, the wind blew, and his clothes fluttered. His silver hair fluttered in front of his forehead and fell to the sides of his face, revealing a handsome face with a faint smile on it. A formless, oppressive aura emanated from him, causing the palms of the 3 crystals half-fairy realm experts to shiver. Retreat. The 2 of them made a prompt decision, as they felt like Suyu's first step was stepping on their chests. If they waited for him to take another step, it would be too late for them to escape. Suyu revealed a faint smile and didn't chase after them. Instead, he walked toward the middle-aged hall master and asked, "Were you injured?" Although it was just an ordinary question, it carried great weight in the middle-aged hall master's ears. It was unknown whether it was because he was wary of Su Yu or because he was intimidated by Su Yu's imposing aura, but he subconsciously took several steps back and looked at Su Yu with a frightened gaze. The middle-aged hall master had a feeling that the person standing in front of him wasn't a nameless nobody, but a majestic existence that could shake the heavens and earth. "Hall master, were you injured?" Su Yu asked with a faint smile. The middle-aged hall master only came back to his senses after being asked twice, so he replied hurriedly, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine." The shrewd middle-aged hall master was already shocked to the point that he couldn't speak coherently. "Since you're fine, let's immediately enter the mountain. There are too many of them, and I won't be able to deal with them all," Su Yu reminded him. If several hundred people attacked him at the same time, Su Yu might not be able to escape even if he used all of his techniques. So, it would be better for him to leave as soon as possible. The middle-aged hall master's whole body quivered when he heard this, and he took out the pearl once again. "Grab me." Although he said this, he still took the initiative to step forward and grab Su Yu's arm. Swoosh! At this moment, Ing Chung, who had just escaped from danger, took off his cloak. His face was still pale, and he grabbed the middle-aged hall master's other arm. The middle-aged hall master looked at him coldly, as if to tell him that he would deal with him later. Your Excellency, please grab my daughter. We will immediately enter the mountain." The middle-aged hall master's tone had changed. Su Yu nodded calmly, then turned his head and smiled at Linger. "Miss Linger, are you all right?" As he spoke, he extended his hand. Linger wasn't unfamiliar with such a smile, but at this moment, it seemed like it possessed a mysterious power, which made it seem even more beautiful. Linger was startled for a moment, and her heart started beating faster. She was mesmerized by it. "Go! Capture him! He's—" The eyes of the fairy realm inspector, who had just escaped from the crowd, were filled with fear. His voice was filled with fright as he shouted at the top of his lungs. As he gave the order, all of the otherworldly experts started moving and surged forward like a tide. When Su Yu saw that Linger was still in a daze, even at such a crucial moment, he couldn't help but furrow his brows. Linger's temperament is really bad. She's so distracted at such a crucial moment. She should really thank her powerful father for protecting her. "I'm sorry for offending you." Su Yu had no choice but to use his palm to suck Linger's energy. Su Yu reached out and grabbed her shoulder. His 5 fingers intertwined and held her firmly. Just after that, Su Yu and the middle-aged hall master entered the pearl. When they came into contact with each other, the pearl in the middle-aged hall master's mouth emitted a faint light, which engulfed his whole body. Moreover, it also spread to the people he had implicated. Ing Chung, Su Yu, and Linger were all engulfed by the light. When they entered the pearl, the light on their bodies fused with the pearl without any obstructions. After they passed through 9 pearls, a clamor suddenly resounded through Su Yu's earphones. Su Yu, who was completely unprepared, couldn't help but feel a sharp pain in his ears. As his soul eyes swept over the area, he saw that there were so many people that they seemed like a sea. They had directly entered the bustling city. Moreover, they were in a plaza at the center of the bustling city. There were 3 layers of guard around the plaza, each one emitting a powerful aura. Even the weakest among them was at the 2 crystals half-fairy realm. In fact, there were even 2 3 crystals half-fairy realm guards. Swoosh! The moment they appeared, the sound of numerous chains could be heard. 9 chains shot out from all directions, wrapping around Su Yu and the rest of them tightly. The materials of the chains were extraordinary. At least, Su Yu could tell that they were even sturdier than the Heavenly Law Alliance's battleships. Unless the 5th Saint Master personally attacked them, no one would be able to break them. Su Yu wasn't unfamiliar with such a formation. After all, the Heavenly Law Alliance's transportation exit was also guarded by the Heavenly Law Alliance's guards. The only difference was that the Empire of Darkness's formation was 10 times that of the Heavenly Law Alliance's. Intelligence Division's Hall Master, Ling Jianlu, has returned to report. The middle-aged Hall Master took out a shining golden badge from his sleeves. Not only was it made of special material, but it also contained a special aura that couldn't be replicated. The 2-3 crystals half-fairy realm guards first looked at Ling Jianliu's face before grabbing the badge to inspect it. Both the person and the badge are real. We will report to the commander. One of the 3 crystals half-fairy realm guards immediately flew away and passed on the message. Suyu praised them inwardly. Entering the peak required a person, a badge, and the commander's approval. Although it was complicated, it guaranteed absolute safety. The fact that the Empire of Darkness had persisted for such a long time without any flaws was mainly due to the 9 Balls formation and their vigilance. It was worth learning from the Heavenly Law Alliance. After a long while, the light suddenly dimmed. 3 phoenix-like birds were pulling a carriage, which was carved with a beast's head, as they slowly flew over. Wherever they passed, the passers-by would make way for them and look at them with respectful gazes. They didn't feel that the carriage, which occupied 1/3 of the sky, would affect them. They were all extremely respectful towards the carriage, or rather, the people within it. The middle-aged hall master didn't look surprised, but Suyu could sense that he was frowning slightly, as well as a faintly discernible look of worry in the depths of his eyes. "Shouldn't you put Linger down first?" A hostile voice suddenly resounded in Suyu's ears. The person who didn't even dare to breathe loudly a moment ago, but now dared to look at Suyu as Ing Cheng. Suyu naturally let go of her. He didn't look at Ing Cheng, nor did he look at Linger. He just clasped his hands behind his back and wore a carefree expression. Linger's face was flushed. When Suyu put her down, she took several rapid breaths, as if she had been holding her breath for a long time. She was very nervous as she was being held by Suyu, but she didn't dare to breathe loudly. She lightly patted her chest, which was heaving up and down intensely. She still couldn't calm down, and her fair face became even redder. Staring blankly at the back of the man who was as noble as a king, Linger felt as if she was in a dream. She still had a surreal feeling. "Linger, are you hurt? I was so worried about you a moment ago." Ing Cheng walked over and stood in front of Linger, blocking Suyu's path. When Linger came back to her senses and heard his insincere concern, she couldn't help but get angry. She then said calmly, "I'm fine, as you didn't need to take such a risk. He saved me, so I didn't die." When Ing Cheng heard Linger's angry words, he became embarrassed. He knew that his previous performance had greatly disappointed her. The more he tried to explain, the more disgusted he would be. He just chuckled and didn't say anything else. He then went to the middle-aged hall master and said, "Hall master, don't worry. You are aware of my relationship with the commander. Even if the lord that the commander serves doesn't get along with the lord that you serve, he won't make things difficult for you for my sake." Chapter 666. The ostentatious flying bird carriage slowly descended. The giant bird's legs were powerful, and when it landed on the ground, Suyu, who was hundreds of feet away, felt the ground tremble slightly. The strong airflow caused a cloud of dust to rise, causing everyone to squint. "Welcome, Commander Long." 2-3 crystals half-fairies, who were leading the guards, bowed at the same time. Their voices were loud and clear, and their movements were precise. Their expressions were extremely respectful, or rather, they were extremely fearful. The unrelated people in the surroundings also retreated, creating an area with a radius of hundreds of feet. The already crowded street was now completely blocked. Swish! Suddenly, 2 delicate and beautiful maids walked out of the carriage, each holding a cloud-concealing sword as they stood respectfully at the door. After a while, a commotion could be heard from within the carriage. A majestic middle-aged man, who was dressed in luxurious clothes and had a purple gold crown on his head, walked out with his hands clasped behind his back. His face was ordinary, and the only thing that caught people's attention were his eyes, which were slightly dark yellow and gave off a sinister vibe like that of a snake. Anyone who looked into his eyes would feel as if they were being stared at by a poisonous snake. "Get up." The middle-aged man walked out of the carriage and slightly furrowed his brows as he fanned the dust in front of his nose. Only then did the armored soldiers dare to get up. However, they still lowered their heads, not daring to make the slightest movement. Suyu was surprised and secretly shook his head. What arrogance! He had seen more than 1 or 2 fairies in the otherworldly army, but he had never seen one who liked to put on airs like this. Who was making a ruckus? The middle-aged man had clearly received a reward, but he pretended not to know, emphasizing his words as he asked calmly. The 2 3 crystals half-fairies did not dare to complain, so they repeated what he had said. Only then did he open his eyes and look at Ling Jianlu and the other 3 people in the chains. Oh, I was wondering who it was. It turns out that you are from the information division. Have you returned from a mission? The middle-aged man seemed to have just noticed them. Ling Jianlu secretly clenched his teeth. The middle-aged man in front of him was the commander of the Imperial Guards, Long Quan. Both of them had once belonged to the Giant Peak Imperial Guards and held the position of deputy commander, but they did not get along. 3 years ago, the Jinlong mutation had occurred. Long Quan's talent was higher, and he had the help of the Holy Lord Palace's experts, so he managed to cross his tribulation and advance to the level 1 fairy realm. Naturally, the Spirit Sword Party started to be ostracized. Fortunately, the Spirit Sword Party had elders who were also in the Holy Monarch Palace. Thus, they were taken care of and transferred away from this place to control the information hall. Thus, they could be considered to have avoided Dragon Spring. This way, they would be able to live in peace. It would be hard for Long Quan to find an excuse to cause trouble for them. It was only at times like this that he would inevitably be put in a difficult position. Commander Long, I have an urgent matter to report to the Sacred Monarch Palace. I hope that you can let us pass quickly. You and I can't afford to delay the battle. Ling Jianlu wasn't afraid and spoke in a reasonable manner. Long Quan's eyelids slightly sank. His originally cold and gloomy eyes seemed to be emitting a chilly aura. However, the corners of his mouth maintained an emotionless smile as he said, "That's right. Since he is the Hall Master of the Morning Hall, he will naturally be allowed to pass. Go ahead." Chila. The chains were unlocked, and they were allowed to pass. Ling Jianlu pulled Ling along and stepped out. "Let's go." "Hold on. Hall Master Ling's report is very important. You should leave first. As for Ying Chung and Ling the 2 of them should stay behind. We need you 2 to explain the situation of the enemy outside so that we can understand the situation better." Ying Chung didn't say anything, but his eyes were filled with joy. Long Quan was his uncle. It wasn't a secret that Ying Chung was interested in Ling On the surface, he asked them to stay behind to report the situation of the enemy outside. In reality, he wanted them to spend time alone and cultivate their relationship. How could Ling Jianlu not know what Long Quan was thinking? He immediately frowned. "Commander Long, Ying Chung can stay behind alone. Ling was frightened on the way here and needs to rest." Long Quan laughed and waved his hand. "Hall Master Ling, don't worry. We're just asking casually. We won't scare Miss Ling, all right. That's it. Bring them away. The situation of the enemy cannot be delayed. Please forgive us." Ling Jianlu was infuriated by such a decision. He couldn't say anything. Since the other party was using the situation of the enemy as an excuse, he couldn't reject it. "I don't want to." Ling rolled her eyes at Ying Chung. She despised him from the bottom of her heart for leaving her in the lurch. She tiptoed and chased after Ling Jianlu. Quang. Suddenly, a loud sound came from beneath Long Quan's feet. He stomped on the ground, causing the ground to tremble and give off a loud sound. Long Quan, who had been laughing a moment ago, now had a stern look in his eyes. "Impudent. The Imperial Guards are responsible for the safety of the headquarters of the Empire of Darkness. You refuse to cooperate. Are you looking down on the Imperial Guards?" Ling had never been reprimanded like this before. Coupled with the aura of the fairy realm that the other party had deliberately released, she was so frightened that her body stiffened and she couldn't move. Ling Jianlu was furious. He was bullying his daughter right in front of him. It was obvious that he was targeting him and making him look bad. However, he couldn't act out. Otherwise, he would be playing into Long Quan's hands. However, even though he didn't dare, there were naturally others who dared too. Imperial Guards. Are the Imperial Guards that impressive? Only those who have returned from outside know about the situation of the enemy outside. Did the Empire of Darkness raise a bunch of useless people? The cold voice came from the cage, from a silver-haired young man. Suyu stepped out with his hands clasped behind his back. He looked around and couldn't hide the disappointment on his face. I had thought that the Empire of Darkness was the mainstay of the Jinlong continent. I didn't expect it to be so weak. Even a dog should know about the situation of the enemy at its doorstep. What about you? It's fine if you don't know about the situation of the enemy right in front of you. It's fine if you don't dare to rush out to expel the strong enemy. Instead, you are so fierce to your own people. What is your duty? Is it to protect the people of the Empire of Darkness and get through this calamity? Or is it to put on airs and show off your power? Are you weak to the enemies and fierce to your own people? The continuous questioning stunned the Imperial Guards. Since ancient times, no one had ever dared to speak to the Imperial Guards in such a manner. The Imperial Guards were responsible for the safety of the Empire of Darkness. They had the right to act first and report later. Who wouldn't be afraid of them? Following that, many of the Imperial Guards' faces turned red. How could they not know about the enemy at their doorstep? There were people monitoring them all day long. It was only because Long Quan wanted to bring Ling Er and Ying Chung together that he had found such an excuse. However, they couldn't come up with an explanation. They couldn't possibly reveal Long Quan's secret plan. Ling Jianlu was stunned. His expression changed. Long Quan had been looking for an excuse to make things difficult for them. Although Ling Jianlu knew that Suyu had hidden his abilities well, how could he possibly be a match for Long Quan and so many Imperial Guards? Long Quan was also stunned. He hadn't expected the scene before him. Someone actually dared to reprimand him in such a manner. Who are you? How dare you speak such nonsense in the Empire of Darkness? Long Quan came back to his senses. He was furious. Chapter 667. Before coming here, he had wanted to keep a low profile. However, after witnessing the Imperial Guard's behavior, he couldn't help but feel disgusted. Was this part of the trump card of the Empire of Darkness that Elder Gio said could turn tide? If this was really the case, then the Empire of Darkness was already rotten to the core, and it wasn't much different from the Heavenly Law Alliance. If even a person like Long Quan could become a leader, then it could be seen how rotten the Empire of Darkness was. Suyu had come here full of expectations, yet he had encountered such a situation. This really disappointed him, and his desire to borrow soldiers suddenly faded. His intuition told him that the Empire of Darkness wasn't reliable. However, he didn't know that everyone in the city was staring at him in shock, as if he was a monster. Long Quan, the commander of the Imperial Guards, wasn't even qualified to ask about his identity in front of this silver-haired youth. Just how arrogant and domineering was that sentence of, "You, stand aside," in just a few short sentences. Even Long Quan himself was instantly dumbfounded. That tone made him feel as though he was facing a sage of the older generation. However, when he came back to his senses, he was both embarrassed and angry. Capture him and interrogate him. Long Quan tried his best to keep his voice calm as he ordered in a deep voice. The surrounding Imperial Guards immediately surrounded Suyu. However, when they looked at Suyu, their gazes were filled with surprise and fear. Swoosh! However, before the Imperial Guards could do anything, a red cloud flew over from the horizon. When it got closer, it was discovered that it wasn't a red cloud, but 3 red-robed old men. "It's the inspector!" The crowd shouted in awe. They were even more respectful than the Imperial Guards. The inspector was like the Empire of Darkness's eyes, and he monitored all of the Empire of Darkness's factions. He was responsible for all crimes and rebellions. Moreover, he had the absolute right to act first and report later. When the Seven Lords' Palace was closed, the Inspector was the most powerful organization apart from the Seven Lords of Darkness. He was like a knife hanging above the heads of the Empire of Darkness's people. Anything that violated the Empire of Darkness's laws would be executed by the Inspector. The people of the Empire of Darkness respected the Inspector far more than the Imperial Guards. Damn it, a bunch of meddlesome people. Long Quan, who had a gloomy look on his face, quickly walked forward and greeted them. Commander of the Imperial Guards, Long Quan, greets the 3 inspectors. When the three of them landed, their auras were all at the level 1 fairy realm. However, it seemed that he had just broken through, and there was still a big gap between him and Bai Chong. The three inspectors had old-fashioned expressions as they looked around. When their eyes landed on the flying bird carriage that almost cut off the entire road, they immediately frowned. The dynasty's law states that those below the saint level cannot have more than 3 mounts. You have 3, so you should kill 2. The commander in the lead was over 80 years old, but he stood ramrod straight. His eyebrows were snow white, and he gave off a cold feeling. After he finished speaking, the other 2 inspectors stepped forward without saying a word. Each of them slapped a demonic beast's head. Long Quan was shocked. "Are you all crazy? You know that this is the mount that the Third Lord gave you." Bang. 2 muffled sounds and 2 blood-curdling screams rang out. The 2 phoenix-like mounts were killed on the spot, leaving only one terrified. "You, how dare you?" Long Quan glared at them. Unexpectedly, the white-browed old man said coldly, "We are just enforcing the law." Yu Guang glanced at the ferocious beast head carriage and said lightly, "The carriage area is too big. Destroy it." The 2 inspectors attacked again. With a crashing sound, the carriage was destroyed. From the beginning to the end, Long Quan did not dare to make a move. This was because he knew very well that once he made a move, he would be committing a great crime of rebelling against the Admiral and the Empire. Even the 3 Saint Lords behind him would not be able to protect him. "Do you have any objections to the inspector's punishment?" The white-browed old man looked at Long Quan coldly. Long Quan clenched his teeth and suppressed his anger. "I have no objections, but this is the mount that the Third Lord gave me." "So what if it was given by the Third Lord?" "This is the mount that the great Saint Master gave him. If he rides on it, he can't disturb the people in the city." A cold and dignified voice echoed out from the void. The white-browed old man and the other 2 inspectors immediately cupped their fists respectfully and said, "Chief Inspector." Swoosh! A red-robed old man descended from the sky like a phantom. He had a white beard, and he looked spirited. "It's Chief Inspector Bai." The crowd started shouting excitedly. "Even the Chief Inspector is here. How did this happen? Isn't the Chief Inspector cultivating in seclusion to become a level 2 fairy? Why did he suddenly appear?" Long Quan's face stiffened, and his eyelids twitched. It wasn't difficult to see the fear in his eyes. Compared to the other inspectors, the Chief Inspector was much more terrifying. He had the power to decide the life and death of anyone below the Great Lord level. Even the former 4 Great Palace Masters could be executed on the spot by him. This was something that ordinary inspectors couldn't do. As a commander, Long Quan was within the scope of the Chief Inspector's power. What was worse was that the Chief Inspector was backed by the Great Lord. Even the Third Lord, who was backing him, had to be wary of him. His power wasn't much higher than theirs, but his authority was overwhelming. "Greetings, greetings, Chief Inspector." Long Quan bowed slightly and cupped his fists. The old man clasped his hands behind his back and walked over to Long Quan. "Commander Long, it seems like you aren't satisfied with my handling of the matter. Why don't you tell me about it?" He looked at Long Quan calmly. Long Quan's forehead broke out in a cold sweat when he felt the old man's gaze. His expression became even more respectful. He cupped his fists again and said, "It was a slip of the tongue, and I offended you. I hope you can forgive me." The Chief Inspector looked away calmly and said, "All right, this won't happen again." "Thank you, sir." Long Quan heaved a sigh of relief. He felt like his life had been spared, and his heart was still palpitating. "So what happened here?" the Chief Inspector asked. His gaze fell on the people who were surrounded by the crowd. Suddenly, his pupils contracted, and he fixed his gaze on a silver-haired man with a calm expression. "Sir, that young man has a strange identity. He maliciously slandered the Imperial Guards and misled the crowd. I was just about to arrest him," Long Quan said righteously. The Chief Inspector took a deep breath and looked over. "How did he maliciously slander the Imperial Guards?" Long Quan repeated Su Yu's words. Of course, he embellished the details and cut out the sensitive parts. Finally, he said, "This young man is extremely arrogant. He does not respect the Empire of Darkness at all. In fact, I do not have the right to ask about his identity. If this kind of person is not punished severely, it will damage the reputation of the Empire of Darkness." The chief inspector listened to him without missing a word. He then turned around and looked into Long Quan's eyes. He said coldly, "I'm not sure if the rest of his words are true. However, there is one thing that is true. You do not have the right to ask about his identity." Long Quan was stunned. Why did the chief inspector say that? In the entire Jinlong continent, besides the king and the Seven Lords' palace, who else could make him look at them this way? The Ling Jianlu father and daughter pair were also stunned. When Suyu had said it himself, they had thought that he was bluffing. However, when it came from the chief inspector, the meaning was completely different. "Alliance Master Su, please forgive me if I have offended you." After coldly glaring at Long Quan, the Commander Admiral came back to his senses. A smile appeared on his face as he quickly stepped forward and bowed respectfully in front of the crowd. Alliance Master Su. Chapter 668. In the Empire of Darkness, there was no such thing as an Alliance Master. Alliance Master. Ling Jianlu pursed his lips and revealed a thoughtful expression. Suddenly, his eyebrows twitched as a person's name appeared in his mind. He was a young man with a head full of unique long silver hair. Their figures gradually overlapped. "Could it be that you are the Heavenly Law Alliance Master, Suyu?" Ling Jianlu gasped in shock. His words caused a huge commotion. "My God, the Heavenly Law Alliance Master?" Sounds of gasping could be heard from the crowd one after another, rising and falling like waves that stretched on endlessly. "No, it's impossible. Why would such a person appear in the Empire of Darkness?" The crowd was bewildered, and they were all shocked by Su Yu's identity. Linger, who was beside them, was stunned. The Heavenly Law Alliance Master? The legendary expert who stood at the peak of the continent? Alliance Master Su? Her mind was blank, unable to connect the two together. Only when she recalled his fairy-like demeanor did she believe it. Seeing that she was traveling with such a legendary great person, Linger was extremely excited. Her beautiful eyes were filled with tears as she looked at Suyu. She opened her red lips as if she wanted to say something, but didn't. Although Suyu was right in front of her, he gave off an oppressive aura that she did not dare to approach. She had never dreamed that she would be able to get so close to the Heavenly Law Alliance Master, the hero she had always admired. However, as she recalled how rude she had been to him, she could not help but feel anxious. Would Alliance Master Su have a bad impression of her? Would he blame her? As she thought about it, she was filled with regret. The great hero was right in front of her, but she had not left a good impression on him. She had even attacked Suyu, scolding him for being too weak and asking him to focus on cultivation. As she thought about it, her face heated up. It was obvious that Suyu had given in to her on purpose. However, Ingcheng was even more afraid than her. It was not a matter of his attitude, but rather, he had once wanted to kill Suyu. If not for Ling Jianliu's presence, he would have already killed Suyu. Subconsciously, Ingcheng took a few steps back. How could he still care about Linger? Who gave you the right to call him Suyu? Chief Inspector Baichong scolded Ling Jianlu. As Ling Jianlu regained his senses, his mind went blank. He had never expected that he would be traveling with the Heavenly Law Alliance Master. "Oh, greetings, Alliance Master Suyu. Please forgive me if I offended you along the way." Ling Jianlu immediately bowed to greet Suyu. He was both excited and somewhat remorseful. In fact, after Suyu had attacked, he should have realized that Suyu's strength and age were similar to the legendary Heavenly Law Alliance Master. Suyu smiled calmly. "Hall Master Ling, you don't have to do this. I should be the one thanking you for bringing me to the giant peak. I should be thanking you for bringing me to the peak." Ling Jianlu was terrified and uneasy. After learning of Suyu's identity, he suddenly felt that Suyu's body was emitting an extremely strong pressure that made it difficult for him to breathe. Yu's master, Suyu Master, was master. Is it really Alliance Master Su? He of Master. Suyu's Ling, Master Wusu, Master of Master. Yu Ling, Master, he Master. Rumor has it that he killed Master Shui Wu with a single palm strike. Rumor has it that he was just a nameless boy in a barren land. He only took 4 years to climb to the top. It's a miracle. Rumor has it that Emu and Black Snow Devil King, the two peerless geniuses of the continent, are one of his identities. Rumor has it that news of Suyu's deeds had spread to every corner of the continent in the past 10 days. Even his past experiences and deeds had spread like wildfire across the continent. Suddenly, everyone knew that a demon-like legendary genius had appeared in the Jinlong continent. In a short span of 4 years, he had risen from a nobody to become the Heavenly Law Alliance's master. He had led the Heavenly Law Alliance's remaining soldiers to destroy the infamous Blood Evil Troop in a tragic manner, creating a new generation of history for the Jinlong continent. Suyu was now a legendary figure who could stand shoulder to shoulder with the King of Darkness. Apart from the King of Darkness, no one could rival him. Alliance Master Su. The crowd suddenly burst into wild cheers. Excitement, admiration, longing, and all sorts of other emotions filled the crowd. The crowd also surged forward like a tide. They were all fanatical and devout believers. Suyu had opened a new chapter in the history of the Jinlong continent. He had become a hero that everyone knew, even in the Empire of Darkness. This was especially true for the young men and women of the same generation. The young men were filled with longing and excitement, while the young women were filled with admiration. The peerless hero was right in front of them. He was young, handsome, had a high status, and possessed great martial prowess. Screams and shouts could be heard along with the crowd. For a moment, it was like a tsunami, and even the mountains were trembling. Even though Suyu was used to such great enthusiasm, he could not help but be shocked by it. "Chief Inspector Bai, let's talk somewhere else," Suyu said helplessly. Bai Chong chuckled. He tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and flew into the sky to lead the way. "Welcome, Alliance Master Su. I will bring you to meet the Lord." Suyu shook his sleeves and left before the crowd could surround him. Before he left, he cupped his hands at Ling Jianlu and Linger. "We will meet again." At the same time, he glanced at Long Quan. His gaze was calm, without any killing intent or emotion. However, Long Quan felt as if he had been electrocuted. His whole body trembled, his vital energy in chaos. His heart was beating so fast that it felt like it was about to jump out of his throat. The moment Suyu's gaze swept past him, Long Quan felt as if he was about to die. It was as if Suyu could wipe him off the face of the earth with just a thought. Fortunately, Long Quan could sense that there was no reflection of him in those eyes. In the eyes of such a legendary figure, a small fry like him was indeed not qualified to leave an image. Not only did he not feel humiliated, but he was actually glad. Fortunately, the difference in status between them was huge, and the Heavenly Law Alliance Master did not bother with a small fry like him. Otherwise, with the frightening abilities of the Heavenly Law Alliance Master, he could destroy him with a thought. "Commander Long, can my daughter and I leave now?" Ling Jianlu could not calm his excitement, especially since Suyu had only said goodbye to him before he left. He was instantly the focus of the crowd. He could feel that many people, whose abilities were no weaker than his, had expressions of fear and respect. This was something that had never happened before. He could not help but feel a sense of pride in his heart. To be able to travel with a legendary figure like the Heavenly Law Alliance Master was an honor that he would never be able to express in his lifetime. Hearing this, Long Quan's facial muscles stiffened. He did not even dare to show his anger. Who knew what the relationship between Ling Jianlu and the Heavenly Law Alliance Master was? Let them pass. How could Long Quan still dare to stop them? After all, Suyu had not gone far. Ling Jianlu heaved a long sigh of relief. He had never felt so comfortable in a long time. He had never even dreamed that Long Quan would be defeated by him. "Home Master Ling." The crowd parted, and a beautiful middle-aged woman walked out, accompanied by 2 maids. "The Heavenly Water Tower's master. It's her. When did she come?" The crowd exclaimed in surprise. Long Quan furrowed his brows and revealed a fearful expression. "Greetings, Heavenly Water Tower's master. May I know why you have come here?" The middle-aged woman smiled. "I'm not here to look for you. She walked gracefully, bringing with her a fragrant scent. The aura of a fairy was faintly discernible. Ling Jianlu felt deep respect for her. It was rumored that the Heavenly Water Tower's master was the granddaughter of a great lord. With the help of the great Saint Master, she had become a Grade 2 fairy 2 years ago. Now, she was preparing to become a Grade 3 fairy. She was an extremely famous person in the Empire of Darkness. With Ling Jinliu's status, it was impossible for him to have any dealings with such a person. He could not afford to be associated with her. Greetings, Heavenly Water Tower's master. Ling Jianlu did not dare to greet her politely. The Heavenly Water Tower's master smiled. Hall Master Ling, you do not need to be so polite. You should go to the Seven Lords' Palace to complete your mission. After you are done, come to the Heavenly Water Tower. I will guide your daughter's cultivation during this period. What? Hearing this, the crowd was shocked. She wants to guide Ling Er's cultivation personally? Even Long Quan was shocked. The Heavenly Water Tower's master had only reached where she was today because she had received guidance from the Great Saint Master. Almost all of her knowledge had come from the Great Saint Master. She had always been a loner and had never guided anyone in their cultivation, let alone welcome them with a smile like she did today. This was the first time that she was guiding someone in public. This was equivalent to her becoming half a disciple. Who would dare to cause trouble for Ling Er in the future? Those who coveted her beauty would have to think twice about whether they were worthy of such attention. Long Quan's heart sank. If anyone wanted to cause trouble for Ling Er and her father in the future, they would have to think about it carefully. Thank you, Heavenly Water Tower's master, for your guidance. Ling Er, hurry up and thank her. Ling Jianlu was extremely excited. He had been pleasantly surprised that day. However, he knew very well that it was all thanks to Suyu. It was obvious that the Heavenly Water Tower's master wanted to get close to Ling Er and understand some of Suyu's situation. Oh, thank you, Heavenly Water Tower's master. Ling was overwhelmed by the favor. Feeling the jealous and envious gazes from the people around her, Ling Er felt very uncomfortable. Ever since she was born, she had never been in such a situation. What a beautiful young lady. Ling Er, come with me. Hall Master Ling will be here soon. The Heavenly Water Tower's master smiled as she held Ling Er's small hand. She then led her away, leaving behind a crowd of people whose eyes were filled with envy. Hall Master Ling felt refreshed. He let out a long laugh and left as well. After some time, the crowd gradually dispersed. Soon, news spread throughout the Empire of Darkness that the Heavenly Law Alliance Master had arrived. This news caused a huge commotion. If not for the fact that Suyu had already entered the Seven Lords' Palace, there would have been another chaotic scene. The interior of the giant mountain was divided into 9 layers. Each layer was an independent space. Suyu had entered the space at the bottom, while there were still 8 spaces above him. Every place was packed with people. The dense crowd was the most unique scene in the giant peak. Suyu frowned slightly and pondered. Chief Inspector Bai, the Empire of Darkness has such a huge population and many martial artists. How do they manage to supply resources? In terms of population, the Empire of Darkness had at least 200,000 people. With such a huge population, just training resources, food, and drinking water would be a huge problem. Chapter 669. This caused Suyu to feel a little incredulous. The Empire of Darkness was heavily surrounded. So how could the giant mountain provide them with such a huge amount of resources? Governor Bai had a troubled look on his face. Alliance Master Su, you have great insight. Our Empire of Darkness does indeed have another source of supply. There are tens of thousands of years' worth of resources stored there. It is more than enough to supply such a large population for 100 years. There is no need to worry. He didn't say where the source of the supply came from, so Suyu obviously wouldn't ask for a rebuff. I see. Suyu nodded, not asking any further questions. The Seven Lords' Palace was located on the 7th floor, just below the 8th floor. This signified its high status. Suyu arrived at the 7th level through the transportation portal. Raising his head, he saw that the 8th floor was right in front of him, and the highest floor, the 9th floor, was right above him. It was rumored that the King of Darkness was on the 9th floor, and he hadn't taken a single step out for several hundred years. No one even knew if he was still alive or not. During this trip, Suyu's mission was to borrow the King of Darkness's soldiers to obstruct the 5th Saint Master's army. However, after seeing Long Quan, Suyu had some doubts in his heart. Was the Empire of Darkness army, which had never gone in a battle, really worth borrowing? In any case, it was better to pay a visit to the King of Darkness first. As for whether he wanted to borrow troops or not, it would depend on their character. Alliance Master Su, please wait for a moment. I will immediately inform the Seven Lords' Palace. Bai Chong brought Su Yu to an ancient palace. Outside the hall, 2 spirited old men were playing chess. They were extremely focused, and their auras were extraordinary. When he examined them, he discovered that their vital energy was boundless and vast, and it was a sign that they were about to advance into the level 3 fairy realm. Could he be one of the Seven Lords' Palace's saints? Greetings, Black and White Elders. Please inform them that Alliance Master Su has arrived. These 2 people, who were about to advance to the level 3 fairy realm, were just gatekeepers. Suyu was secretly shocked. It was as he had expected. The Empire of Darkness Foundation was extremely strong. Oh, the Heavenly Law Alliance Master? The 2 old men stopped paying attention to the chessboard and looked at Suyu in surprise. However, his expression was calm, without the excitement or longing of others. Let's talk about it after the game is over. The 2 old men glanced at each other before withdrawing their gazes. What they meant was for Suyu to wait for them to finish their game of chess. How is this the way to treat a guest? This was clearly a humiliation, not to mention Suyu's identity, which represented a great force. Even if he was an ordinary guest, there was no reason for him to be stopped outside the door by the gatekeeper. Bai Chong had a troubled look on his face. This, Black and White Elders, he is the Heavenly Law Alliance Master. He is a guest from afar. If you do this, there's no place for you to speak here. If you want to wait, then wait. If you can't wait, then leave. The 2 old men didn't even lift their eyelids as they spoke indifferently. His calm expression was filled with arrogance. They had obviously heard of Su Yu's name, but they still dared to be so arrogant. Su Yu knew what they were thinking. The Prime Minister's doorstep is a 7th-ranked official. So what if he's guarding the door? It's interesting to see his sense of superiority. Su Yu chuckled. He couldn't help but feel disdain for them. The 2 of them thought that they were the Seven Lords' Palace's gatekeepers, yet they were so arrogant. It was laughable and pathetic. A chess piece landed on the board. The black-robed old man glanced over. His expression was still calm as he said, "It is not your place to behave atrociously in front of the Seven Lords' Palace. A loose tongue can cause trouble. Remember this." Suyu smiled faintly. It's easy to deal with the King of Hell, but it's difficult to deal with the little devils. Just focus on guarding the door. Farewell. After witnessing Long Quan, Suyu was already disappointed with the Empire of Darkness's army. However, since he was already here, there was no reason for him not to pay his respects. Now he was being blocked by 2 insignificant gatekeepers. It would be difficult for him to even meet the Seven Lords' Palace's lords, let alone the King of Darkness. I really made an unnecessary move. Suyu laughed at himself. If he had known that this would happen, he wouldn't have come to the Heavenly Law Alliance. Swish, keep it. It's up to you whether you pass it on or not. Suyu took out Elder Gio's handwritten letter and threw it on the chessboard. After he finished speaking, he flicked his sleeves and took his leave. Bai Chong looked anxious, but the 2 old men didn't seem to care at all. Bai Chong didn't dare to scold them, so he could only chase after Su Yu and apologize repeatedly. Alliance Master Su, please wait for a moment. Let me explain. Su Yu waved his hand at him. As he entered the teleportation space, he said, Chief Inspector Bai, you don't have to be like this. This matter has nothing to do with you. I should be thanking you for your hospitality. Sigh. The 2 old men are just like that. They are proud and arrogant, and the people of the Empire of Darkness have also been mistreated by them. Alliance Master Su, you don't have to bother with them. Bai Chong sighed helplessly as he pondered the matter. The Heavenly Law Alliance's master must have come here for some important matter. However, the 2 old men were too arrogant and didn't know what was important. So you didn't bother with the two old men anymore. So he changed the topic. Chief Inspector Bai, do you have these two elixirs for sale in the Empire? He took out a list of the Phoenix Tail, Purple Fire elixirs, and the Peerless Moonfall elixirs, which were needed to save the Phoenix Master Chiao. Bai Chong was surprised by this, and when he took a look at the list, he furrowed his long white brows. The Phoenix Tail Purple Fire elixir is easy to obtain, as I have one that I can give to you. However, the Peerless Moonfall elixir is really difficult to obtain. Why? The Empire is so prosperous, yet you don't have such an elixir for sale? So you couldn't help but wonder. Bai Chong shook his head. No, it's not that we don't have any elixirs for sale. It's just that these elixirs are somewhat special, as they require a full moon's light in order to be refined. Moreover, after they are refined, they can only be used for half a month. Today is the middle of the month, so even if we still have the Peerless Moonfall elixir, its medicinal power should be running out. Moreover, if we want to obtain a new Peerless Moonfall elixir, we will have to wait for half a month. Alliance Master Su, you really came at a bad time. Wait for half a month? How could Su Yu wait for that long? After all, the 5th Saint Master's army could come out of seclusion at any moment and destroy the northern continent. However, the Phoenix Master Chiao's injuries weren't light, and if he couldn't gather the elixirs within half a month, her injuries might worsen, and she might never wake up again. Wait. It's not that there isn't a way, but it's a bit difficult, Bai Chong suddenly said. Su Yu raised his brows. Chief Inspector Bai, please speak. There is a hidden space within the Empire's giant mountain. This space is a secret realm, and the flow of time here is different from the outside world. According to my calculations, today should be a full moon. If we can obtain a full moon's light, we can refine the Peerless Moonfall elixir, Bai Chong said. Su Yu was astonished. A hidden space? Is it the 8th layer? The Seven Lords' Palace was a majestic existence, yet it could only exist in the 7th layer. So, it was obvious that the 8th layer was an extremely important place. Alliance Master Su, you are really smart, Bai Chong said with a smile. A thoughtful look appeared in Su Yu's eyes. Could it be that the 8th layer is a place that provides resources for the whole empire? That's not the case. The 8th layer isn't empty because it has an abundance of resources. On the contrary, the 8th layer's space is extremely unstable, and spatial fissures often appear there. It's extremely dangerous, so it's uninhabitable. As such, few people go there. However, it's also because of this that the frequent spatial fissures cause a difference in the flow of time. Some people use this difference in the flow of time to cultivate within it. Of course, there are also some people who occasionally enter it to obtain a full moon's light. Using the time difference to cultivate, so you suddenly thought about how he could control time. How much slower is the 8th layer's time compared to the outside world? So you asked. Bai Chong replied, 2 hours in the 8th layer space is equivalent to 4 hours in the outside world, which means that there is a difference of 2 times the flow of time. 2 times was quite a lot, and it wasn't without reason that the Empire of Darkness had managed to produce so many fairies in just 3 years. She then added, however, only a few people can stay inside for 4 hours, as miasma will seep in every 2 hours due to the cracks. The miasma contains an extremely intense poison, and once it comes into contact with it, even a level 3 fairy will faint. This is why the people inside will leave every 2 hours, and they will wait for 4 hours before entering again. Then, they will enter again. Su Yu smacked his lips when he heard this. What kind of miasma is so powerful that it can even affect grade 3 fairies? It seems like the time difference here isn't that easy to deal with. Alliance Master Su, why don't you wait for a moment? I will personally enter it and obtain a full moon's light. Bai Chong was extremely earnest. Su Yu was slightly embarrassed. After all, he had even stolen Bai Chong's cloud galloping horse. Perhaps it was because of his status, or perhaps it was because he respected Su Yu, but he had never mentioned it. So, how could he allow Bai Chong to take such a risk for him? Although Bai Chong didn't say it clearly, Su Yu knew that it wasn't a good place. Chief Inspector Bai, may I enter? Su Yu asked. Bai Cheng hesitated for a moment before replying. According to the rules, only the Empire's people are allowed to enter. After all, such an important place wouldn't allow outsiders to enter. Then, what if I hide my identity? So you took out a mask and put it on. Bai Cheng hesitated for a moment before replying. Fine, the 8th layer isn't anything important. Alliance Master Su, you won't cause any harm to the Empire if you enter. Follow me. An hour passed. At the end of the 7th layer, there was a teleportation formation. It was ancient and damaged, and it seemed like it had been used frequently. Sizzle. All of a sudden, the formation flickered intensely, and a large number of people fell out of it. There were more than 10 of them. The people who came out at the front were still fine, but the ones who came out at the back were in a more sorry state. There were even some people who were carrying fainted people out. Everyone's faces were filled with shock, and they were all discussing the matter in shock. What happened? Bai Cheng's heart tightened, and he immediately walked over to check on the person who had fainted. It was a young man in his early 30s, and his face was purple. It was obvious that he had been poisoned. Greetings, Chief Inspector. Seeing that it was the Chief Inspector, everyone was filled with respect and greeted him. Chief Inspector, it's Miasma. The person who was supporting him was a young woman in her 30s. She seemed to be his wife, and there were tears on her face. Her face was also purple, as if she had been poisoned. Bai Cheng raised his brows. Apart from him, is there anyone else who is injured? Similar things happened occasionally, especially when people were cultivating alone. Without a companion to remind them, they would lose track of time and cultivate for more than an hour. Then, they would be affected by the miasma. There were even some people who were far away from the teleportation formation, and they couldn't escape in time. However, the Empire had already demarcated a safe zone near the teleportation formation. As long as one didn't leave the safe zone, there wouldn't be any danger. Chapter 670. No. The young woman shook her head. However, 2 people did not manage to escape. Did someone die inside? Bai Cheng was shocked. Did you leave the safe zone and could not escape in time? Looking at the pale faces of the people around him, Bai Cheng realized that something was wrong. No, we were all in the safe zone, but the miasma did not erupt on time. Instead, it came suddenly. Fortunately, we were close to the spell, so we were able to escape in time. However, those 2 people did not make it back. The miasma suddenly erupted. Bai Cheng's eyes shone. Who are those 2? Did they leave the safe zone and enter the depths of the space? The young woman nodded. Yes, they said they had a mission to enter the depths of the transportation portal to repair the crack. However, not long after they entered, the miasma suddenly erupted. They seem to be Palace Master Nanguang and Inspector Bai Yun, who have just returned. It is said that they want to atone for their crimes and enter the space to carry out a dangerous mission. Bai Cheng nodded. His eyes shone, as if he knew what was going on. Take him to rest. Don't tell anyone about what happened here, Bai Cheng said coldly with a taut face. How could they dare disobey him? Moreover, after the danger they had just experienced, they did not dare enter the space to cultivate. Alliance Master Su, it looks like we will have to wait for a while. I did not expect the miasma to suddenly erupt. We are in danger now. Bai Cheng sighed. Su Yu thought to himself. He had been observing Bai Cheng's expression all this while. It seemed as if Bai Cheng was hiding something. Palace Master Nanguang and Bai Yun were being punished for carrying out a dangerous mission. However, Bai Cheng was not willing to reveal what kind of mission they were carrying out. All right, we will wait for a while, Su Yu said helplessly. As they waited, Bai Cheng handed Su Yu a cold jade gourd. This is a gourd made of moon cold jade. It can store moonlight. After you enter, find a place with ample moonlight, open the gourd, and leave it there for the time it takes to drink a cup of tea. Then, you'll be able to store enough moonlight. Take it out, and I will help you refine the Peerless Moonfall pill. Also, the area within 30 miles of the transportation portal is a safe zone. There's enough moonlight there. Remember not to go beyond 30 miles. Otherwise, if there's an emergency, you will end up like them. You will either be injured or unable to return. Su Yu's expression was stern. I understand. 2 hours passed. Well, the miasma should have dissipated. You can go in now. Bai Cheng infused his genuine qi into the formation and activated it. Because of the accident, Suyu was the only one who entered. "I'll be right back." Suyu cupped his fists at her, then stepped onto the transportation portal and entered it. With a flash of white light, Suyu was teleported away. Bai Chong, who was standing in the same spot, pondered for a moment before stepping onto the teleportation formation. He looked worried. "I hope that place has been repaired." After he spoke, Bai Chong also entered the teleportation portal. However, the teleportation portal's location was different from Suyu's. Shua. When Suyu opened his eyes, a faint stench assaulted his nostrils. Without hesitation, Suyu revolved his vital energy to cover the surface of his body to block the stench. What entered his eyes was a hazy light purple world, as if the entire world was covered in mist. This is the residual miasma, right? Although it has lost its toxicity, if one inhales too much of it, there will still be unexpected dangers. Suyu remained vigilant at all times. Zhang Xian took a moment to sense the spiritual energy in this place, and he found that the spiritual energy in this place was actually quite thin, about 20 to 30% weaker than the spiritual energy in the outside world. Logically speaking, this place was not suitable for cultivation. However, the flow of time in this place was very attractive. Time was of the essence, so Suyu did not waste any time. Using his soul eyes, although the mist was thick, he could roughly see everything within a 3-mile radius. There is moonlight. Suyu discovered that, 3 miles away, there was a gentle light shining down from the sky, enveloping a small hill. With a tap of his toes, Suyu arrived at the small hill in a few flashes. He could see that the dense purple clouds in the sky were penetrated by the moonlight. A hazy, dreamy light shone down on a small stone. Looking at the source of the moonlight, a bright moon hung in the sky. It was a full moon. Suyu took out the jade gourd and placed it on the small stone, quietly absorbing the light of the full moon. He stood to the side, paying attention to his surroundings in case the miasma exploded again. All of a sudden, Suyu vaguely saw a blurry silhouette 3 miles away. It was staggering in the direction of the transportation station. Thump! Before long, the figure tumbled onto the ground, never to get up again. "There's still someone alive?" Suyu was slightly surprised. Without thinking too much, Suyu flew over. He landed next to the figure on the ground, took a closer look, and could not help but be shocked. "It really is you, Palace Master Nanguang." The person on the ground was a middle-aged woman. Her eyelashes were trembling, and although her eyes were closed, one could see that her eyeballs were moving rapidly. At the same time, her snow-white forehead tightened, showing an expression of pain. Didn't they say that even grade 3 fairies would faint from the poison? Palace Master Nanguang is not dead, and yet she is still alive? Suyu was surprised. Suddenly, he saw a red rope hanging around her neck. The pendant was buried in her chest, but he did not know what it was. However, the faint miasma that came close to Palace Master Nanguang was absorbed into the pendant. It must have been this item that saved her life. Speaking of which, it was reasonable for Palace Master Nanguang to be punished because she had lost the Northern Continent's division. It was somewhat related to Suyu, so of course he would not leave her die. Suyu helped her up and sat her down with his legs crossed. He then placed his palms on her back and transferred his vital energy into her, helping her expel the poison from her body. To Suyu's surprise, as soon as his vital energy entered her body, it disappeared without a trace. Although this pendant is precious and saved her life, it has now had the opposite effect. Even my vital energy has been sucked away. Suyu immediately discovered the source of the problem, so he had no choice but to remove Palace Master Nanguang's pendant. "I hope there is no misunderstanding." Suyu laughed bitterly. He then took off the pendant. Once he was done, Suyu immediately began to treat her injuries. Wherever his vital energy passed through, the poison in Palace Master Nanguang's body would be expelled from her pores. From afar, Palace Master Nanguang's body was covered with a layer of faint purple fog. It was a poisonous fog. After a while, there was no longer any poisonous fog left in her body. The pain on her face had been greatly alleviated, and she now looked like she was in a deep sleep. Suyu retracted his palms, and calculated that the jade gourd should have absorbed enough moonlight. He carried Palace Master Nanguang back to the small hill and examined the jade gourd. The jade gourd was flowing with a golden current that looked like flowing water. Full moon's light. Suyu took out the lid of the gourd and put it back into his robes. It's time to leave. Suyu was about to leave with Palace Master Nanguang when a jade box slipped out of Palace Master Nanguang's sleeves. Suyu did not think too much about it. He grabbed the box and took it with him. However, when he saw the object in the jade box, Suyu looked at it in shock. The cloud galloping horse's hair. Inside the jade box, there was a white hair sealed in layers. Suyu had this hair as well, and he had taken 300 of it from a cloud galloping horse. Why does she have the cloud galloping horse's hair? Suyu was shocked. The hair contained a strong poison that could kill anyone below the grade 4 fairy realm. Suyu had almost been poisoned to death when he had inhaled a small amount of the hair. The poison was still fresh in his mind. Moreover, he had experienced the power of the cloud galloping horse. It had pushed him from a 2 crystals half-fairy realm to the peak of a 3 crystals half-fairy realm. Suyu's mind raced as he recalled Palace Master Nanguang's mission and Bai Chong's evasive words. He could not help but look into the depths of the space. Could the cloud galloping horse have grown up here? That did not seem possible. According to Yun Yazi, even the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion could not nurture the cloud galloping horse, let alone the 8th level, where the spiritual energy was thin. However, it was better to believe it than not. Suyu returned to the transportation portal and placed Palace Master Nanguang on it. He then activated the portal and transported her to the outside world. Suyu then flew into the depths of the space. Soon, Suyu was 30 miles away. After walking for 30 miles, the remaining miasma in the air suddenly became thicker. After taking a breath, Suyu felt his head swell and his chest become heavy. It was extremely uncomfortable. Suyu held Palace Master Nanguang's pendant in his hand. Immediately, the situation was alleviated. With the help of the pendant, Suyu quickly went deeper. The space was not big, and in the time it took to drink half a cup of tea, Suyu had already traveled thousands of miles. The deeper he went, the more desolate it became. Of course, he had seen a few corpses along the way. It was unknown how long they had been dead. At the end of the space was a hazy, chaotic zone, filled with dangerous cracks in the space. Creak! Suddenly, Suyu heard a soft explosion sound. He was shocked, and he turned around to dodge it without hesitation. Just as he was about to leave, a black crack the size of a strand of hair flashed past his right calf. Suyu could not help but be vigilant. Although it was just a weak space power, if it had passed through his calf, it would have cut his calf in half. The danger of this place was not just for show. However, even at the end of the space, it was still very wide. He did not know where Palace Master Nanguang had obtained the cloud galloping horse's hair. At that moment, a wave of vital energy came from 10 miles away. Suyu looked over and could faintly see a crooked stone tablet in the midst of the remaining miasma. The wave had come from there. Strange. There's still someone here? Moreover, why is he here? Suyu was curious. After thinking about it for a moment, he flew over and hit a mile away. After investigating the area, Suyu was shocked to discover that there was a corpse lying under the stone tablet. It was none other than Inspector Bai Yun. However, his whole body was festering, which meant that he had been killed by a deadly poison. There was a crack in the space above the stone tablet, which only allowed one person to pass through. Compared to the other cracks in the space, this one was much more stable. It seemed like it had existed for a very long time. Around the crack, there were still vital energy waves. Could the cloud galloping horse have come from this crack? Suyu pondered. After thinking for a moment, he looked around and entered the crack. However, just as he entered the crack, a black shadow suddenly attacked him. It was carrying a deadly poison that could make one's scalp go numb. This poison was the cloud galloping horse's poison. Chapter 671. Suyu gripped Palace Master Nanguang's pendant tightly in his left hand as he weaved signs with his right hand. A layer of black, rolling ghosts appeared, and the Eternal Stone King armor appeared on his body. Whoosh! The poisonous fog surged over, and the light film on the surface of the eternal stone king armor shook, emitting layers of black smoke. It seemed as if it was being corroded. A white poisonous fog the size of a palm seeped in, heading straight for Su Yu's body. Just a tiny bit of the poisonous fog had almost taken Su Yu's life, let alone such a large one. At this critical moment, Su Yu immediately infused his vital energy into the pendant in his left hand. The pendant released a dim light, and the white poisonous fog was completely absorbed. The danger had been averted. However, after a short while, a giant white cloud came over and enveloped Su Yu within it. The light emitted by the jade pendant in his hand trembled slightly. The jade pendant had protected Palace Master Nan Guang until now, but could no longer withstand the cloud, galloping horse's poison. Seeing that danger was approaching, Su Yu immediately took action. He took a deep breath of fresh air and immediately activated the Bing character of the Buddhist saint's 8 characters. The surrounding air was compressed into a powerful sound wave in Su Yu's mouth, which he then spat out. The sound wave radiated outwards, creating a powerful shock wave that swept out 1,000 feet in all directions. The white poisonous fog was blown away by the wind. Only then did Su Yu manage to avert the danger. The sky was clear, and Su Yu could finally see his surroundings clearly. As he looked around, Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. He was shocked by the scene before him. He saw that he was on a lush green mountain peak. The sky was blue, and the clouds were drifting. The beautiful sun was shining brightly. Under the sunlight, there was a boundless green grassland. Rare beasts and spiritual materials were scattered all over the grassland like beautiful pearls. The dense spiritual energy was so thick that it was almost viscous. Like thin clouds, it cast a hazy veil over the beautiful, sunny world of grassland. Su Yu could not help but take a deep breath of the spiritual energy. He suddenly felt his exhaustion disappear, and his mind became clear. The vital energy he had lost was quickly replenished and restored. In just a moment, he felt refreshed. What a thick spiritual energy! Su Yu's eyes were filled with disbelief. The density of the spiritual energy here was more than 3 times that of the mysterious, heavenly divine pavilion. He even wondered if he was still in the Jinlong continent. He could sense that there were too many precious spiritual herbs in the grassland, all of which were rare treasures on the continent. The richness of resources in this place could be said to be terrifying. Perhaps the accumulation of the entire continent for hundreds of years could not compare to this. All of a sudden, a thought flashed through Su Yu's mind. Speaking of which, the Empire of Darkness had such a large population, it was easy for them to supply their resources. According to Chief Inspector Bai, it seemed like the Empire of Darkness had 10,000 years of accumulation. Could it be that the place he was unwilling to reveal was right before his eyes? This was the treasury that the Empire of Darkness had accumulated for 10,000 years. Over the past 10,000 years, this place had been accumulating resources endlessly. The spiritual energy that the resources emitted was limited by this space, causing the density of the spiritual energy in this space to be even higher than that of the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion. Looking at the scene in front of him, Su Yu was deeply shocked. 10,000 years of experience was indeed frightening. Even a small piece of grassland here had enough resources to crush an entire continent. It was only after a long while that Su Yu came back to his senses. He took a deep breath, and his eyes shone brightly with a hint of excitement. He was not a gentleman. Since he had entered this place by accident, there was no reason for him to return empty-handed. With these resources, he could nurture the Heavenly Law Alliance's members and raise their overall power to a whole new level in a short period of time. Although they might not be a match for the 5th Saint Master's army, they still had some hope. Little Kylan, I'll leave it to you. Su Yu released the Little Kylan. With its devouring power, it was able to devour a large amount of resources in a short period of time. The Little Kylan landed on Su Yu's arm. It still looked as if it had just woken up, but when it smelled the dense and viscous spiritual energy in the air, its whole body quivered, and its big purple eyes widened. Its 2 eyes were filled with excitement. The little Kylan had an unusual passion for spiritual objects. Even if it did not need them, it still loved to collect them. Suyu had experienced the little Kylan's ability to collect treasures in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion. Squeak! The little Kylan let out an excited cry. It did not need Suyu's reminder, as it disappeared in a thin air. When it reappeared, it was at the foot of the mountain. There was a grassland with a diameter of 1 mile. All of the spiritual materials had been swallowed into its stomach. In the area that had been swallowed, there was not even a single blade of grass left, let alone the remnants of the spiritual materials. All that was left was a bare piece of yellow soil. Moreover, such a scene was quickly spreading in all directions. Suyu smacked his lips, feeling slightly guilty. Isn't it too cruel and ruthless to leave even a single blade of grass? However, he did not have the time to care about the little Kylan. Instead, he lowered his head and looked at the mountain beneath him. This mountain was the only mountain in the boundless grassland. The mountain was completely bare, without any insects or plants. Even the soil was lifeless, without any signs of life. It was as if the whole mountain was a mountain of death. The reason for such a situation was either that there was a terrifying living being in the mountain, which no living being dared to approach it, or that the mountain was special and unsuitable for living beings. According to Suyu's senses, there were no powerful living beings in this place. The only explanation was that this place was unsuitable for ordinary living beings to live in. Suyu's gaze penetrated through the mountain and went straight into its center. All of a sudden, Suyu's pupils contracted, while a pleasantly surprised expression appeared on his face. In his eyes, he saw a small horse covered in white fur, leisurely drilling into the depths of the earth. A cloud galloping horse. Suyu's eyes shone with excitement. This was a powerful spiritual object that could raise the cultivation of anyone below the grade 3 fairy realm. Sure enough, the cloud galloping horse, which even the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion could not nurture, could be found in the Empire of Darkness's 10,000 years of history. The cloud galloping horse in Bai Chang's hands had originated from this place. The black shadow that had attacked Suyu just now must have been this cloud galloping horse. Suyu's eyes shone brightly as he engulfed his whole body with spiritual energy. He then drilled into the ground and started chasing after it. Although the cloud galloping horse was a plant, it had a high spiritual nature and could even move freely. Sensing that Suyu was chasing after it, it quickly drilled into the belly of the mountain. Do you think you can escape? Suyu revealed a faint smile as he chased after it. After half a cup of tea's time, when Suyu arrived at the belly of the mountain, the cloud galloping horse's aura suddenly disappeared. After he drilled forward for a while, Suyu discovered that the belly of the mountain was hollow. There were several holes of different sizes that led to the outside world, which allowed the spiritual energy from the outside world to enter the mountain. The belly of the mountain was not very big, and it only had a circumference of several thousand feet. The surrounding area was purplish-black, and it contained a terrifying poison. This was because it had been here for a long time. What a powerful poison! Suyu did not dare to be careless, so he maintained the Eternal Stone King armor's defensive state. These walls had accumulated deadly poison all year round, and if one did not possess the constitution of the fairy realm, even a touch of it would cause one's body to fester and die. As he floated in the air, Suyu's gaze was fixed on the center of the space. There was a small pond there, which had a circumference of 30 feet. The pond's water was dark brown, and a dense purple fog was rising from its surface. This purple fog was exactly the same as the poisonous fog that was lingering in the 8th layer of the giant mountain. Could it be that the poisonous fog, which erupts once every hour, originate from here? Suyu revealed a pensive look. As he looked at the pond, Suyu's eyes gradually narrowed, and he used his soul eyes to look at the bottom of the pond. It really is in the pond. As he used his soul eyes, he saw a small white horse lying motionlessly at the bottom of the pond. However, Suyu suddenly discovered that there were more than 300 small white balls of light floating motionlessly in the pond. They emitted the same aura as the cloud galloping horse, and they also contained an extremely powerful poison. Wait, could they be the cloud galloping horses' seeds? Suyu suddenly thought of this and was startled. If they were the cloud galloping horses' seeds, then Suyu's heart was thumping wildly. It would be difficult for other people to raise these seeds, as they needed an extremely high amount of spiritual energy in a special environment. However, it would not be a problem for Suyu, who possessed the 9 jade spiritual pearl. If he could raise all of them, just thinking about it made Suyu excited. Wouldn't he be able to quickly raise a large group of experts? Moreover, if he added the genius spiritual treasures that the small Kylan had gathered outside, it would be possible for him to raise the Heavenly Law Alliance's power by another level. I really must rely on myself. Suyu's eyes flickered, and his mood became much better. Suyu revealed a playful smile as he looked at the spiritual pond once again. After half a cup of tea's time had passed, Suyu was holding a jade bottle, which contained 300 cloud galloping horse seeds. As for the black pond's water, it had been completely evaporated by the high temperature. The cloud galloping horse, who was at the bottom of the pond, looked at Suyu in fear. Its whole body shivered as it let out a mournful cry. It's obviously just a plant, yet it can imitate an animal and let out a mournful cry. As expected of a worldly spiritual creature, it has really broadened my horizons. Suyu revealed a faint smile as he collected the jade bottle. However, he did not try to capture it. Instead, he flicked his sleeves and turned around. In the end, you are still a worldly spiritual creature, so I will let you live. There were 2 cloud galloping horses in this place, but one had already been eaten by Suyu. As such, the remaining one was of no use to Suyu's cultivation. So, why didn't he let it live? After all, it was never a good thing to do. After Suyu jumped out of the spiritual pond, he went back to the mountain's peak. As he looked at the grassland situation, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. The boundless grassland had already been reduced to a vast expanse of yellow soil. Not even a single blade of grass was left behind by the Empire of Darkness's gaze, let alone worldly, spiritual treasures. In the sky, a small Kylan, whose whole body was pink, was happily devouring the remaining grassland. It seemed like it wouldn't stop until it had emptied the whole grassland. That's enough. Come back. Suyu transmitted his thoughts to the Kylan, and the excited small Kylan immediately lowered its head and walked back reluctantly. Chapter 672. Taking away half of the Empire of Darkness resources had already brought fear to the Empire of Darkness. If the last half of the resources were taken away, the Empire of Darkness would not be able to hold on for long. It would then be destroyed by the 5th Saint Master's army. The Empire of Darkness could not be allowed to perish in the face of such a great enemy. At that moment, the crack in the space at the peak of the mountain suddenly showed signs of closing. Suyu was shocked by this scene. He grabbed the small Kylan and rushed in before the crack closed. If he was left here, it would be terrible if the next person from the Empire of Darkness came to take the resources and discovered Suyu's existence. Just as the crack closed, Suyu successfully left the stone tablet space. However, just as he was about to leave, Suyu saw a person leaving in the purple fog. He did not seem to have noticed Suyu's existence, as he was vigilantly observing the surrounding purple fog. Bai Chong? Why is he here? Suyu was slightly surprised. He had come here because of the vital energy of the person who had marked him. He had thought that it was some other survivor, but he had not expected it to be Bai Chong. It seemed like he had been poisoned, as his movements were quite slow and he could not use the speed of the fairy realm. It seemed like the cloud galloping horse had injured him just now. Fortunately, he had not died. However, the vital energy that he had released had attracted Suyu. That's good. Suyu hid his aura and used his movement technique to its peak. After an hour, Suyu returned to the transportation portal and used it to teleport out. After a moment of dizziness, Suyu returned to the 7th level. However, before he could open his eyes, he felt a cold wind blowing towards him. When he opened his eyes, he saw a pair of beautiful eyes filled with anger and shame. A sharp snow-white long sword was thrust towards Suyu's face. Shameless! Her red lips were filled with anger as the white sword in her hand moved even faster. Palace Master Nanguang, what are you doing? Suyu recognized the person and was shocked. He extended 2 fingers and flicked the snow-white, long sword away. The tip of the sword brushed past Suyu's cheek, and the cold sword energy cut off a strand of his silver hair. Suyu? At that moment, the light around Suyu's body dimmed, revealing his real body. Palace Master Nanguang was shocked. When Palace Master Nanguang came back to her senses, she hurriedly withdrew her sword and said, "I'm sorry, Alliance Master Su. I didn't do it on purpose." His face was filled with panic and uneasiness. Where was the ferocious look from before? They were all scared out of their wits by Suyu's appearance. "Why are you doing this?" Suyu flicked his broken silver hair and asked in surprise. Palace Master Nanguang's face immediately turned red. It was unknown whether she was nervous or angry. "Alliance Master Su, I'm sorry. I mistook you for a pervert." "Perverted thief?" Suyu's heart thumped. "Someone violated you while you were unconscious?" When he brought Palace Master Nanguang out, she was still unconscious. Could it be that time? Suyu frowned slightly. Why was the Empire of Darkness filled with such lowly people? "Yes, while I was unconscious, he took the precious pendant from my chest. How despicable. I will wait here for you. If I manage to find you, I will definitely skin you alive to avenge your humiliation," Palace Master Nanguang said hatefully. Suddenly, she noticed Suyu's strange expression and asked, "Alliance Master Su, what's wrong?" Suyu's face stiffened, his expression slightly unnatural. Was he the perverted thief? Cough, cough. Suyu pretended to be serious as he opened his palm. "Is this the pendant you were talking about?" A jade-colored pendant lay quietly in Suyu's palm. Palace Master Nanguang was stunned. "Alliance Master Su, the pendant. Why is it in your hands?" Palace Master Nanguang was stunned. She felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Could it be that Suyu molested her? "What do you think?" Suyu looked at her coldly. "Do you think that without the pendant, who could have transferred vital energy into your body to heal you? Do you think that if no one had brought you out, you would still be able to stand in front of me and talk? If I had known that you would repay my kindness with ingratitude, I would have just watched you die from the poison. Now, I have earned myself the reputation of a perverted thief. What a joke." Suyu's face was filled with anger. Palace Master Nanguang's heart trembled. She had just remembered that the pendant could absorb vital energy from outside. It turned out that Suyu had wanted to save her. Thinking of this, the resentment in her heart dissipated, but she still looked ashamed. Looking at Suyu's angry expression, she became even more anxious. "I'm sorry, Alliance Master Su. You saved me, and I should have thanked you, but I still drew my sword against you." "I'm sorry." Palace Master Nanguang felt extremely guilty. "Why don't I give the pendant to you as compensation?" As she spoke, she stared at the pendant in Suyu's palm with a pained expression. Swish! Suyu waved his sleeves and threw the jade pendant back. "Do you think that I want your pendant? Take it back and disappear from my sight." Suyu pretended to be indifferent, but he was actually ashamed. Palace Master Nanguang's whole body trembled as she grabbed the pendant. She immediately retreated, not forgetting to apologize again and again. Tears welled up in her eyes as she said, "I'm sorry, Alliance Master Su. I really didn't mean it." With a guilty conscience, Palace Master Nanguang left. However, for some reason, Palace Master Nanguang felt that something was wrong. She was the one who had suffered a loss, so why was she the one apologizing? Palace Master Nanguang walked away with a belly full of questions. Swish! The transportation portal glowed with a white light, and Bai Chong appeared. "It seems that Alliance Master Su has already come out. You must have obtained the full moon's light." Bai Chong saw Suyu waiting outside, so he thought that Suyu had already returned. Suyu secretly glanced at Palace Master Nanguang, who was leaving, and heaved a sigh of relief. If she had been here, she would have been interrogated by Bai Chong. Then, Bai Chong would have found out that Suyu had just returned. Bai Chong would have become suspicious, and he might have even returned to the stone tablet space to investigate. If more than half of the Empire's resources were stolen, it would be difficult for Su Yu to walk out of the Empire of Darkness alive. This was the reason why he had chased Palace Master Nan Guang away. It's ready. Chief Inspector Bai, please take a look. Su Yu handed over the jade gourd filled with the full moon's light. Bai Chong took it and looked satisfied. Not bad, it's the full moon's light. It's enough to make a cauldron of peerless moonfall pills. Alliance Master Su, please follow me. The Heavenly Water Tower has several alchemy masters, and the peerless moonfall pills are more difficult to make. Heavenly Water Tower? Su Yu nodded slightly. Following behind Bai Chong, Su Yu descended to the 6th level. Looking at Bai Chong's back, Su Yu pondered. He had clearly stolen the precious cloud galloping horse from Bai Chong's hands. So why did he not mention it? Also, why did Bai Chong appear in the stone tablet space? As he pondered, they arrived at the Heavenly Water Tower. Alliance Master Su, please wait here for a moment. I will go upstairs to inform the alchemy masters. Bai Chong asked Su Yu to wait in the guest hall on the 1st level of the Heavenly Water Tower while he went upstairs. Alliance Master, please forgive me. These alchemy masters are the 3 most respected in the Empire of Darkness, and they have strange temperaments. I will go upstairs to see if they are free. I believe that once they know of your identity, they will be more than willing to help you, even if they are busy. It turned out that Bai Chong was worried that something like the Black and White Elders would happen again, which would embarrass Su Yu. Thank you, Chief Inspector Bai. Su Yu smiled. I will look around on the 1st level. As he spoke, Su Yu began to look around on the 1st level. He had deliberately kept a low profile, and his divine decree surrounded his body, making him very inconspicuous. Even if they saw Su Yu with their naked eyes, they would not pay attention to his presence. Thus, no one recognized Su Yu for a while. After walking around for a while, Su Yu realized that the Heavenly Water Tower mainly sold all kinds of elixirs. There were elixirs that could increase one's cultivation level, and elixirs that could heal one's injuries. There were also many supplementary elixirs that could focus one's mind, increase one's speed, and replenish one's spirit energy. There was a huge variety of elixirs. Unfortunately, the level of the elixirs is not high enough. They're not very useful to me. So he shook his head and walked back. But just as he turned around, he saw a silver elixir from the corner of his eyes. The elixir glowed with a silver light, but it was very dim and did not have any luster. It lay in the corner of the counter, and Su Yu did not notice it when he walked past it. But this glance caused Su Yu's eyes to flicker. Could this be? Su Yu's eyes gradually emitted a blazing light, and he was filled with excitement. I can wear out iron shoes in fruitless searching, only to find it effortlessly. So you could not help but laugh out loud. He had already obtained the 3 materials needed to repair the evil-destroying silver eyes, the undead herb of the netherworld, and the blood of a real dragon. Only the lightning, avoiding silver pearl, remained undiscovered. Chapter 673. Are you interested in the water avoiding pearl? The shopkeeper's face was filled with a humble smile. Water avoiding pearl? Su Yu rejoiced inwardly. The silver pearl in front of him was dim and emitting a faint water vapor. It was indeed similar to a water element treasure. However, according to the information he had obtained from Phoenix Master Chiu, it was similar to the legendary lightning avoiding silver pearl. Although there were some differences, they were close. The lightning avoiding silver pearl, which even the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion had failed to obtain, had unexpectedly been found in the desolate Jinlong continent. What's the price? Su Yu asked casually. The shopkeeper had a shifty look on his face as he rolled his eyes. Hee hee, if you keep the water-avoiding pearl in your mouth, you won't need to breathe for 10 days. It's a middle-grade divine artifact, and it's extremely difficult to find one in this world. If you can exchange it for a middle-grade divine artifact, hee hee, there were many people in the area, and they didn't try to hide their conversation. Thus, many people heard them. When they heard the water-avoiding pearl's high price of a middle-grade divine artifact, many people laughed inwardly. As expected of the mustached man, he's so greedy. He's willing to exchange a low-grade divine artifact for a middle-grade divine artifact for a water-avoiding pearl. He's another idiot who's about to be ripped off. The mustache man is a famous profiteer in the Heavenly Water Tower. 70% of his goods are fake, while 30% are real. He's asking for an exorbitant price. His reputation has already spread far and wide, yet there are still people who dare to buy things from his counter. He's so young. It seems like he's too inexperienced. He can only blame his bad luck for running into the mustache man. However, this loss should make him learn to be a little more obedient. It's not too much of a loss, Various voices echoed from the crowd, but Su Yu's expression didn't change. A middle-grade divine artifact? I don't have one. Su Yu shrugged his shoulders helplessly. He really didn't have any middle-grade divine artifacts on him. Oh, it seems like he's not stupid. Let's go. There's no good show to watch. Someone in the crowd laughed mockingly. The shopkeeper's mustache trembled. He rubbed his hands together and chuckled. It's fine if you don't have any middle-grade divine artifacts. As long as I have 3 low-grade divine artifacts, I'll be enough. The passers-by could not help but laugh as they silently watched the mustached man slaughter the ignorant youth. I don't have a low-grade divine artifact either. Su Yu shook his head calmly. The shopkeeper's face became gloomy, and he looked at Su Yu once again. He frowned, as he felt that Su Yu had an extraordinary bearing and was dressed decently. It was only now that he felt that Su Yu was a fat sheep that had escaped from a powerful family. Unexpectedly, after repeated attempts, he was unable to take out even a single medial grade god artifact. He could not help but feel dispirited. Customer, this shop doesn't accept credit. Why don't you go to another shop and have a look? Huh? The shopkeeper put on a friendly face, but in reality, he was chasing the customer away. So you didn't bother to haggle over it. He really didn't have any low-grade or middle-grade divine artifacts, as the lowest grade divine artifact he had was a high-grade divine artifact. What about a high-grade god artifact? If you're willing to exchange, I will give you the water, avoiding pearl, and 3 middle-grade divine artifacts. Are you willing to exchange for it? So you took out a steel hammer, which was surrounded by black energy. In the mysterious Heavenly Divine Pavilion's auction, all middle-grade divine artifacts and below were sold. Only 2 or 3 high-grade divine artifacts remained. The shocking spiritual pressure and oppressive touch caused the crowd, which had been mocking Su Yu, to suddenly become deathly silent. Many pairs of eyes opened wide, as they stared at the black demonic hammer in Su Yu's hands without blinking. Shock surged in their hearts. A high-grade divine artifact. The sound of people swallowing their saliva was like the bubbling of a spring. The Jinlong continent lacked resources, and without the cultivation of the fairy realm, it was impossible for one to possess a high-grade divine artifact. However, in order to exchange for a water-avoiding pearl, Su Yu had actually taken out a high-grade divine artifact. Even the shopkeeper was dumbfounded. His eyes were wide open as he stared at the black demonic hammer, his mind completely blank. The value of a high-grade divine artifact was equivalent to 5 middle-grade divine artifacts. Thus, a water-avoiding pearl and 3 middle-grade divine artifacts could be exchanged for it. Such a great bargain was enough to drive anyone crazy. However, the shopkeeper's forehead was drenched in cold sweat. How could he possibly take out 3 middle-grade divine artifacts? How about it? Are you going to exchange for it or not? If you can't afford it, I will look for another shop. Su Yu pretended to take back the water-avoiding pearl. The shopkeeper became anxious. Just now, he had mocked Su Yu for not having money. Only now did he realize that in front of Su Yu, he was not even worth a strand of hair. I'm sorry, sir. Please forgive me for not recognizing your greatness. Please forgive me for offending you just now. My shop is a small business, and I really cannot exchange for a high-grade divine artifact. The shopkeeper's face was flushed. If one were to talk about looking down on others, then he had done it perfectly just now. So you looked at him calmly. Judging a book by its cover will only bring humiliation upon yourself. Hand over the water, avoiding pearl. After saying this, he threw the demonic hammer over. Sir, you are using a high-grade divine artifact to exchange for it. Even a shopkeeper's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He looked as if he was dreaming as he watched Su Yu throw the demonic hammer. Su Yu was slightly impatient. Hand it over. When the shopkeeper came back to his senses, he was overjoyed. He was so excited that his whole body was trembling. This was a great bargain. Fine. The shopkeeper took out the water-avoiding pearl and offered it to Suyu in front of many envious and shocked gazes. Excitement appeared in Suyu's eyes, as he had just gotten a trifling high-grade divine artifact. This was really a great bargain for him. However, just as Suyu extended his hand to grab it, a sharp wind assaulted him from behind. The incoming force was not considered ferocious, but the energy contained within it gave Suyu a great sense of danger, which made him feel greatly alarmed. Suyu didn't dare to hesitate, so he moved his shoulder aside and dodged the wind. Ding! A crisp sound echoed as a folding fan landed on the water, avoiding pearl. The hand that was holding the folding fan was a pale hand that was slightly green. Its fingers were thin and long, and they were faintly emitting a strange grayish-green color. It seemed like the hand of a dead person. You want to exchange a trifling high-grade divine artifact for the lightning, avoiding silver pearl's embryo? Heavenly Law Alliance's master. Is it really good to deceive a junior like this? A hoarse voice transmitted from behind Suyu. His voice was filled with an eerie coldness, which made people shudder. Suyu turned his head around coldly, and a young, pale face appeared in front of him. His hair was gray, and his eyes were dark yellow. His face seemed to have been smeared with a layer of lime, and he didn't look human at all. Even the air he exhaled was icy cold. Moreover, his whole body emitted a deathly aura, which made people feel uncomfortable. This person seemed even more like a corpse than the Heavenly Law Alliance's First World Seniors Corpse. However, with his soul eyes, Suyu could clearly sense that this person was still alive, and he wasn't a corpse. Third Lord. Someone in the crowd exclaimed in fear and respect. They had just been shocked by Suyu's wealth, but now they all became deathly silent. They didn't even dare to look at the grayish-white youth. The whole place was deathly silent. Suyu squinted his eyes. The Third Lord was one of the Seven Lords' Palace's previous Seven Lords of Darkness. Suyu's pupils contracted when he carefully examined him. A grade 4 fairy. According to his level, he should be at the middle stage of the fairy realm. He was ranked 3rd, yet he was already at the level 4 fairy realm. So, how powerful would the Second Lord and the Great Lord be? The cultivation of the Seven Lords of Darkness had indeed exceeded the expectations of the outside world. The Jinlong continent was no longer the impoverished world that only had 3 fairies. However, this Third Lord did not come with good intentions. Third Lord, did anyone teach you about first come, first served? Suyu coldly snorted. As for deceiving me, a lightning avoiding silver pearl has been covered in dust for such a long time, yet no one has discovered it. How can you reprimand someone who has a discerning eye? It should be a joke. You are the ones who have eyes but failed to recognize the treasure. The Third Lord's dark yellow eyes rolled around, while the corners of his mouth curled up into a sinister smile. You have a glib tongue. The Heavenly Law Alliance's master is not only strong, but it seems like your mouth is also quite powerful. Suyu coldly laughed. There is something else that will surprise you even more. Thud. Suyu's whole body shook, while the veins in his arms bulged. He clasped his fingers together and slapped the folding fan. You think you can knock my folding fan away? It's still too early. The Third Lord laughed mockingly. However, when Suyu's palm slapped the folding fan, he felt an unexpectedly powerful force. The folding fan that he had placed on the lightning, avoiding silver pearl, was slapped away. Under the tremendous force, the folding fan almost fell out of his hand, and he ended up making a fool of himself. Fortunately, the Third Lord's level 4 fairy power was not just for show. At such a crucial moment, he flicked his little finger to stabilize the folding fan, then pointed it at the lightning, avoiding silver pearl once again. However, Suyu took advantage of this short moment to grab the lightning, avoiding silver pearl with his index and middle fingers. Suyu didn't have the time to examine it carefully, so he swiped his index finger and stored the lightning, avoiding silver pearl in his spatial ring. Unless he took the spatial ring and forcefully removed the imprint he had left on it, the lightning avoiding silver pearl would belong to him. How dare you act so arrogantly in my empire of darkness? The third lord was infuriated that he hadn't managed to snatch the lightning avoiding silver pearl in front of everyone. Suyu calmly shook his sleeves as he calmly looked into the third lord's eyes. Although the world is vast, there is no such thing as a reason. Yet, you are saying that it is reasonable for you to snatch someone else's treasure? When the surrounding people heard this, they all trembled in fear for Suyu. Although the third lord had indeed tried to snatch the treasure, how could he say such words in front of him? Among the 7 great lords, only the third lord had a violent temper. He had a strange temperament and was easily angered. Even the 7 great lords didn't dare to provoke him. I am the one who has the final say. The third lord's body gradually emitted a putrid, murderous aura. I will give you 3 breaths' time to reply. Hand it over, then get lost from the Empire of Darkness. Otherwise what? If you want to fight, I will take you on at any time. Although I'm not talented, I am more than capable of fighting you. Suyu's expression was calm, as if he wasn't afraid at all. Chapter 674. What a joke. You are the Heavenly Law Alliance Master. You have just won a battle, yet you still dare to borrow soldiers from the Empire of Darkness. Do you really think you are someone important? How laughable and pitiful. Suyu mocked himself. Is this how the 7 Lords' Palace sees the Heavenly Law Alliance? He had really humiliated himself by coming here. Haha. No matter how weak we are, we should still be stronger than you. Although the Heavenly Law Alliance is weak, we have the courage to fight and save our land. What about the 7 Lords' Palace? You clearly have the power to save the entire continent, yet you hide in a corner and live a peaceful life. I don't understand where you get the right to mock us. At this point, Suyu had completely given up on the idea of borrowing soldiers. He could not rely on the Empire of Darkness. All he could rely on was himself. His words had hit the nail on the head. It was true that the Empire of Darkness, which had tens of thousands of years of history, was a cowardly tortoise. At this moment, the third lord still dared to mock them shamelessly. He did not feel ashamed of being a cowardly tortoise. They did not have the right to mock the Heavenly Law Alliance. You? Fine. Let me see what else the Heavenly Law Alliance Master has to be proud of other than his glib tongue. I will use my fists to crush your confidence. The third lord was clearly enraged, and his eyes were filled with a brutal aura. With a flash of light, his whole body exploded. The vital energy that erupted from his body was like a river that had burst its banks. It contained a terrifying power as it surged forward. Those who could not retreat in time were all sent flying. Those who were close to him even spat out mouthfuls of blood. The crowd panicked and dodged in all directions. Cries and screams could be heard everywhere. Is this how you treat your own people? Suyu's eyes were cold. The third lord did not care about the safety of innocent people. He had attacked them without hesitation. It is none of your business. Kneel down before me. The third lord's face was cold as the murderous aura around him intensified. Suyu's eyes were filled with coldness. I should be the one saying that. Creak. Suyu reached into his robes and took out a jade bottle. Within it were streaks of lightning. A dangerous aura was emitted from the jade bottle, radiating in all directions. Rumble. The faint sound of thunder could be heard intermittently, but when it fell into the ears of the people, it was exceptionally stifling. Almost everyone suddenly had an illusion that they were about to be destroyed. It was as if there was something extremely terrifying sealed in that small jade bottle. Once it was opened, it would destroy everything. Schwa. At the same time, Suyu took out the colorful Thunder Herb armor and used it to shield his palm. Then, he opened the jade bottle. Bang! The entire heavenly water tower was almost overturned. The jade bottle shook violently, and a large amount of 5-colored lightning flew out. They weaved a multicolored lightning net in the air and enveloped the third lord's body. The third lord's face was filled with rage. The moment the lightning net enveloped him, his expression changed drastically. He cried out involuntarily, "Tribulation lightning!" He had passed the tribulation successfully, so he knew how terrifying the disastrous thunder was. He also knew that the disastrous thunder in front of him was even more terrifying than the disastrous thunder he had faced when he had passed the Grade 4 fairy realm. Most importantly, if it was an ordinary level 4 fairy, he would be able to resist such disastrous lightning with his vital energy. However, the Third Lord's cultivation technique was biased towards evil. The disastrous thunder was his greatest nemesis. Normally, he would need to prepare for several days before he dared to take the risk. But now, who would have thought that someone could control the disastrous thunder? What the Third Lord did not know was that this bottle of disastrous thunder was used to deal with the corpse of the First World Senior, who had the body of a divine master. Even he had been subdued, let alone the Third Lord. Suyu had no confidence in dealing with other Grade 4 fairies, but he was not afraid of the Third Lord, who was covered in a deathly aura. Sizzle. Ah! As the lightning net enveloped the Third Lord, he immediately let out a blood-curdling scream. The murderous aura on his body was like a drop of water falling into a raging fire. It sizzled and evaporated continuously. In his anger, the Third Lord immediately revolved his vital energy to shake off the lightning net. However, as soon as his vital energy appeared, it was turned into nothingness by the thunderbolt, as it contained a deathly aura. He could not use any of his vital energy at all. As a dignified Grade 4 fairy, he could not resist the disastrous thunder net at all. Bang! Right at this moment, a palm swung toward his face. It was Suyu, who was about to slap him. "How dare you?" the Third Lord roared angrily. Slap. However, as soon as he spoke, the crisp sound of a slap reverberated through the entire 6th level. "Why wouldn't I dare?" Suyu waved his right hand, which was wrapped in the thunder herb, and said nonchalantly, "You want to trample on my confidence? Why can't I slap you to wake you up? All right, I will make you wish you were dead." The Third Lord was furious. He had come here to cause trouble, but he had not expected to be humiliated instead. His voice was filled with anger, and his eyes were filled with humiliation and hatred. Slap. What answered him was another loud slap in the face. "Do you think you are powerful just because you have a loud voice?" Suyu looked at him coldly as he took out a jade box from his pocket. There were 300 white hair strands lying quietly in the box. Suyu carefully took out one strand of hair and held it between his fingers. His eyes were filled with coldness. "Since you want to make me wish I were dead, I will have to make the first move to prevent future troubles." The cloud galloping horse's hair could poison anyone below the Grade 4 fairy realm to death. Although the Third Lord was a Grade 4 fairy, his vital energy had been suppressed, and the cloud galloping horse's poison was enough to kill him on the spot. Right at that moment, a beautiful woman descended from the pavilion and stood between Suyu and the Third Lord. "Alliance Master Su, please show mercy. I have come to greet you late. Please forgive me." The beautiful woman bowed gracefully. Suyu glanced at her and saw that she was standing in the corner where the cloud galloping horse's hair had shot out. "Get out of my way, no matter who you are." Suyu's expression did not change. He looked past her and stared straight at the Third Lord's face, which was filled with hatred. Since he had offended the Third Lord, there was no reason for him to show mercy. The middle-aged woman smiled bitterly. "My abilities are weak, and I am not worthy of your attention. Please, on account of the fact that several alchemy masters are helping you to make elixirs, please spare the Third Lord's life. If he has offended you in any way, I am willing to compensate you." Hearing this, Suyu hesitated for a moment, then kept the cloud galloping horse's hair. He looked at the Third Lord coldly and snorted. "If you want to seek death again, you can come and see me at any time. Consider yourself lucky this time." Hearing this, the Third Lord's face turned as red as a pig's liver. He was the Third Lord, yet he was being threatened by an outsider in the Empire of Darkness. However, the Third Lord could sense the killing intent in Suyu's eyes, so he did not dare talk back. He could only grit his teeth and swallow the humiliation. "Who are you? Where is Bai Chong?" Suyu raised his hand and put the disastrous thunder back into the jade bottle. After using it, the disastrous thunder had dimmed by half. It seemed like it could only be used once more. Suyu said expressionlessly. The middle-aged woman smiled. "I am the Heavenly Water Tower's master. The pavilion that Alliance Master Su is in belongs to me. Looking around at the ruined pavilion, the middle-aged woman smiled bitterly. Only then did Su Yu feel a little apologetic. I hope you can forgive me for disturbing you. I will compensate you for your losses. I wouldn't dare. The Heavenly Water Tower's master was a little surprised by Su Yu's humility. She quickly rejected him. It is my honor that Alliance Master Su could come to my pavilion. If you don't mind, why don't you come to my pavilion and drink some tea? I believe the elixirs will be refined in no time. Su Yu waved his hand. Tower Master, you are too kind. I will wait here quietly. The Heavenly Water Tower's master had no choice but to disperse the people in the pavilion. Third Lord, you should leave too. I hope you were just being impulsive and causing trouble in the Heavenly Water Tower. Don't do it again. The Heavenly Water Tower's master's cultivation was far inferior to the Third Lord's, but she was not afraid of him. The Third Lord snorted and looked at Su Yu coldly. Then, he looked at the Heavenly Water Tower's master and left with a face full of resentment. Alliance Master Su, please excuse me. The Third Lord spends most of his time in the mountains of corpses and uses the deathly energy to train. That is why he has a strange temper and offended you. The Empire of Darkness is very welcoming of you. Very welcoming? Su Yu thought of the black and white elders in front of the Seven Lords' palace. He could not help but laugh at himself. In the eyes of the Empire of Darkness, the existence of the Heavenly Law Alliance was actually a joke. They were both ancient forces, but the difference in power between them was billions of miles. The only people who welcomed him were Bai Chong, the Heavenly Water Tower's master, and the common people. In the eyes of the higher-ups of the Empire of Darkness, Su Yu, the Heavenly Law Alliance master, was nothing. Is that so? Su Yu laughed calmly and did not say anything else. The Heavenly Water Tower's master seemed to have read Su Yu's mind. She stood quietly to one side, not daring to disturb him. An hour later, a red-robed figure rushed over. It was Bai Chong. He was smiling and holding 2 jade boxes in his hands. In one of the jade boxes, there was a purple elixir. There were 9 fine stripes on the elixir. Upon closer inspection, they looked like phoenix tails. It was the phoenix tail purple fire elixir. In the other jade box, there was an elixir that had a faint glow. It looked like a bright moon. It was the peerless moonfall elixir that had just been refined. The former was what Bai Chong had promised to exchange for, while the latter had just been refined. He had finally gathered the 2 elixirs needed to save the Phoenix Master Chiao. Alliance Master Su, the 3 masters have agreed. Bai Chong presented the 2 elixirs with both hands. He was as respectful as ever. Su Yu took them, feeling satisfied. This trip had not been a fruitless one. Looking at Bai Chong, Su Yu could not help but feel emotional. The higher-ups of the Empire of Darkness did not like him. Only Bai Chong respected him and had helped him selflessly. Moreover, without him, Su Yu would not have been able to enter the Empire of Darkness's 10,000 years of history. Thank you for taking care of me along the way, Chief Inspector Bai. I have nothing else to give you, but this is a small token of my appreciation. Su Yu took out a small golden awl. The awl was filled with the power of disastrous thunder. It was extremely frightening, and it was not any weaker than the disastrous thunder that had suppressed the Third Lord. Anyone below the Grade 2 fairy realm would be turned into ashes upon contact with it. Chapter 675. Bai Chong was stunned. When he regained his senses, he frantically refused. Alliance Master Su, what do you mean? How can I accept such a huge gift? There were only a few semi-manufactured spiritual artifacts in the Empire, and they were all controlled by the Seven Lords' palace. He was just a governor, so how could he possess a spiritual artifact? This was obtained from the enemy, so it is useless to me. Chief Inspector Bai, you don't have to reject it. Su Yu stuffed it into Chief Inspector Bai's arms. Then, he took out 4 complete crystals and gave them to the Heavenly Water Tower's master. 1 crystal is the Heavenly Water Tower's compensation. As for the other 3, give them to the 3 alchemy grandmasters. I don't like to owe people favors. Please accept them. Bai Chong and the Heavenly Water Tower's master were shocked once again. The Jinlong continent did not have crystals, which were filled with vital energy. Only the other worlds had them. Their value was obvious. I have already expected this. Take care. I will take my leave now. Suyu cupped his fists and prepared to leave. The Heavenly Water Tower's master panicked. Alliance Master Su, aren't you going to rest for a few days? The Great Lord is still in seclusion. I will pass on the message. Suyu laughed self-mockingly. There is no need for that. I know my limits. Just pretend that I never came here. He had already made up his mind. The two of them felt that it was a pity, but they did not ask him to stay. Alliance Master Su, please follow me. I will transport you out. Bai Chong was grateful. The treasure in his hand was heavy, and his heart was filled with excitement. Transport? Suyu was confused. Wasn't he supposed to return from the first level? He was prepared to cross the otherworldly army once again. Suyu was brought to the top floor of the Heavenly Water Tower, where there was a large transport portal. This transport portal can transport our people 100 miles away from the giant peak. However, it cannot be transported from the outside world. Thus, returning to the giant peak is difficult, but leaving is easy, Bai Chong explained. Suyu understood. He now understood why Bai Chong had appeared outside the peak and been hunted by the otherworldly army. It turned out that there was a transport portal here. Thank you. We will meet again in the future. Suyu cupped his fists and stepped onto the transport portal. With a flash of light, he completely left the Empire of Darkness and quickly escaped the otherworldly army's encirclement. He then began his journey back to the northern continent. In front of the transport portal, congratulations, Governor Bai. You have obtained a semi-manufactured spiritual weapon. This is a treasure that I have always dreamed of obtaining. The Heavenly Water Tower's master looked at the sharp all-in Bai Chong's hand enviously. Bai Chong grinned from ear to ear. I didn't expect Alliance Master Su to be so generous. I don't know how to repay you. Everyone says that Suyu is a person who values kindness and relationships. Now, all that I've seen him today, I've finally seen it for myself. The Heavenly Water Tower's master sighed with regret. If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have cared about my status. I would have come out and befriended him earlier. Bai Chong was surprised. Heavenly Water Tower's master, please forgive me for not understanding. Since you are the Great Lord's descendant, why do you hold Alliance Master Su in such high regard? Alliance Master Su is not much stronger than the Third Lord, let alone the Second Lord or the Great Lord. The Heavenly Water Tower's master's eyes shone brightly. She then asked, Governor Bai, do you really think that Alliance Master Su is only capable of killing a grade 3 fairy? Bai Chong was startled. He pondered for a moment before replying. From the rumors, it seems like that is all he has. To be honest, he was only able to defeat the Third Lord by luck. If the Third Lord had not been restrained, it would have been difficult to predict the outcome of the battle. That is indeed the case. However, I have just obtained a secret treasure. The otherworldly 8th Saint Master has acknowledged Suyu as his master. The Heavenly Water Tower's master's lips curled into a meaningful smile. Bai Chong furrowed his brows. This is not a secret. Everyone should know about it. What is so strange about it? With his abilities, it is not difficult for him to forcefully suppress the 8th Saint Master and force him to acknowledge him as his master. The Heavenly Water Tower's master smiled mysteriously. Governor Bai, tell me, if the Great Lord forces you to become his slave, will you run away, or will you agree without any resistance? Hearing this, Bai Chong was slightly displeased. This analogy is not very appropriate. However, if such a situation really occurred, I would not just sit and wait for my death. If I chose to run away, there would still be a glimmer of hope. Unless a peerless expert like the King of Darkness personally intervenes, it is unlikely that I will become someone's slave without any resistance. This matter concerns my life and dignity. She then added, do you know that the 8th Saint Master, Wu Hen, was only given the choice of death or submission by Suyu? He did not even try to run away before he chose to acknowledge him as his master. According to some secret information, he had seen Suyu fight in the mysterious Heavenly Divine Pavilion. It is said that even a divine master was killed by Suyu. The Heavenly Water Tower's master took a deep breath. As she spoke, she could not hide the shock on her face. What? Killed a god? Divine master? Bai Chong sucked in a breath of cold air. 3 years ago, the people of the Jinlong continent did not know what a divine master was. However, after the invasion of the otherworldly army, some of Jojo's knowledge had spread. Only then did they know that there was a supreme existence above the fairy realm, the divine master. That was a terrifying expert who could destroy the world. With a wave of his hand, he could change the weather and change the world. However, there was actually a rumor that Su Yu had killed a divine master. Bai Chong's mind went blank. His respect for Su Yu was mostly due to the fact that Su Yu had led the human race to fight against the otherworldly army. When she heard such a shocking secret, Shuang could not help but feel dizzy. If it wasn't for the fact that my information is extremely reliable, it would be very difficult for me to believe that such a terrifying person like him was hiding in our Jinlong continent. Only our king could compete with him. Even my grandfather, the Great Lord, couldn't be compared to Alliance Master Su. Now, do you understand why I am so humble towards Alliance Master Su? The Heavenly Water Tower's master asked. She had a high status, yet she had lowered herself to get close to Ling and her father. Now, she had even disregarded her status to personally accompany Su Yu. In the eyes of others, she had indeed lowered her status. However, only she knew that it was all worth it. Bai Chong was an example. He had casually obtained a semi-manufactured spiritual artifact after leading the way a few times. This was unimaginable in the Jinlong continent, but it had happened to Alliance Master Su. Hiss! This news is too earth-shattering. We must immediately inform the Great Saint Master and the Second Saint Master, who are in seclusion, Bai Chong said hurriedly. Moreover, we must be quick. Due to the Third Saint Master's actions, I'm afraid that Su Yu will create an irreparable rift between us and the Empire of Darkness. He might even become enemies with such a peerless expert. Just thinking about it caused Bai Chong's whole body to shiver. The Third Saint Master had just offended Su Yu. The Heavenly Water Tower's master's heart skipped a beat. Her expression changed slightly. This matter cannot be delayed. I hope that they can make up for it immediately. As she spoke, Bai Chong suddenly remembered something. His face turned pale. I'm afraid that we are already too late. The Heavenly Water Tower's master was stunned. What do you mean? You don't know this. I accompanied Alliance Master Su to visit the Seven Lords' Palace, but the Black and White Elders. Bai Chong angrily told her everything that had happened. The Heavenly Water Tower's master was shocked. What? These two old fellows actually dared to? They didn't even allow such peerless experts to enter their doors. Chapter 676. Outside the Seven Lords' Palace. Two elders, one dressed in black and the other in white, were deep in thought as they played chess. A white letter was casually placed on a corner of the chessboard, stained with tea. They did not pass on Elder Jio's letter. Swoosh! Two figures flew over. They looked at each other, then continued playing chess as if nothing had happened. They did not care about the two elders at all, even if one of them was a descendant of the Great Lord. Give me the letter. The Heavenly Water Tower's master was furious. This was not the first time she had experienced their arrogance. However, seeing that they did not even pass on the letter, she became even angrier. The white-robed elder did not move. He was completely focused on the chessboard and did not hear anything. As for the letter, he did not even look at it. The Heavenly Water Tower's master was furious. She walked over and removed the dirty letter. Then, she said coldly, "All right, I want to see what you two have to say later." Feeling humiliated, the Heavenly Water Tower's master entered the Seven Lords' Palace. Her identity was special, so the two elders did not stop her. However, they glanced at Bai Chong. Bai Chong knew what they wanted, so he waited outside. He did not have the right to enter the Seven Lords' Palace as he pleased. Inside the Seven Lords' Palace, 7 cube-shaped light screens were floating in the air. Each of them was only the size of a palm. They were arranged in a certain order, from the lowest to the highest. No one knew that each of the 7 palm-sized light screens represented the existence of a great lord. The light screens were personally set up by the King of Darkness. Each one of them was an independent space. Unless it was open from the inside, it would be indestructible. The 7 spaces were connected to the Empire of Darkness, 10,000 years of history. The spiritual energy within them was astonishing. Cultivating within them for 1 day was equivalent to cultivating for 10 days in the outside world. The 7 lords of darkness were cultivating within them. Greetings, 7 great lords. I have something to report and would like to meet you. As soon as she finished speaking, the 5 palm-sized light screens started to spin silently. Blurry black figures appeared indistinctly. The black figures were extremely mysterious. Why are you disturbing our cultivation? A strand of extremely indistinct voice that overlapped, and its source couldn't be detected. It was extremely indistinct, and it was unknown which sage monarch it came from. The Heavenly Water Tower's master's heart tightened as she presented the letter with both hands. This is a letter left behind by the Heavenly Law Alliance master, Suyu. Please have a look. She glanced at the 2 screens at the top, and her eyes were filled with disappointment. Her grandfather, the Great Lord, and the Second Lord, who were of the highest status, were not present. Borrowing soldiers? Sorry, we already know that. Do you really think this is your home to disturb us over such a small matter? Even if you're a descendant of the Great Lord, you should know what's important. It was the 3rd Lord, who had been spared by Suyu. Shui Tian had no respect for him at all. His face was cold as he said, "Your injuries have healed so quickly? You're so quick with your words." Immediately, Shui Tian sensed a pair of cold and gloomy eyes, and he could clearly feel a great deal of humiliation and annoyance. Oh, is the 3rd Lord injured? The other 4 black shadows in the light screens shook. The Heavenly Water Tower's master smiled, but did not say anything. 4 great lords, this letter is for the king. Please pass it on to him. This matter is very important and cannot be delayed any longer. The king? Shui Tian, the king is not interested in foreign affairs, so this letter cannot reach him. Just pass it to us. If there's nothing else, you can leave now. A suction force took the letter away. From their tone, the Heavenly Water Tower's master could tell that they were being perfunctory. She became anxious. As expected, the higher-ups of the Empire of Darkness had never taken the Heavenly Law Alliance seriously, so you did not think much of them either. Great lords, I repeat that his letter is very important. We must pass it to the king, the Heavenly Water Tower's master said firmly. Hearing this, the few great lords who were eager to continue their training became slightly impatient. Shui Tian, we are willing to stop our training and meet you because you are a descendant of the Great Lord. However, if this is just an insignificant matter, I hope it will not happen again. That's all I have to say. You may leave now. The overlapping voices filled the space as a gentle force wrapped around the Heavenly Water Tower's master and gently pushed her away. Seeing that they would not listen to her, the Heavenly Water Tower's master gritted her teeth and said, "All right, there are some things that I wanted to only let my grandfather know. Now, there's no harm in letting you know first." As soon as she finished speaking, she immediately told them all the secrets that she had found out about. In an instant, the gentle force around her retreated. The 5 figures swayed as if they were communicating with each other telepathically. After a while, 5 rumbling sounds could be heard. The 5 black figures broke free from the space and flew down, revealing their true forms. 5 men and women of different ages, dressed in different clothes, had revealed their true faces. Outside, the black and white elders, who were deep in thought while playing chess, were shocked at the same time. What happened? Why did the 5 great lords come out at the same time? The white-robed elder was shocked. The black-robed elder was slightly uneasy. The last time the 5 great lords came out at the same time was 3 years ago. Could something big have happened? Recalling the threat that Shui Tian had made before she left, the 2 of them frowned and fell into deep thought. Shui Tian, do you have any proof of what you said? The white-haired elder, who was the oldest of the 5 great lords, asked as he stroked his long beard. The other 4 great lords, especially the 3rd lord, were the most concerned. I don't have any proof. I only know that the news came from the higher-ups of the Heavenly Law Alliance. Very few people know about it. The Heavenly Water Tower's master's eyes were resolute. However, it is better to believe it than not. Suyu's abilities cannot be estimated with common sense. Hearing this, the great lords fell into deep thought. The third lord heaved a sigh of relief and said coldly, "How dare you disturb our training with such a nonsensical matter? Wouldn't it be a joke if word got out?" Killing a god lord was a fantasy story, so they naturally would not easily believe it. We know about this. We will talk about it after the great lord wakes up. The bearded elder shook his head, looking disappointed. He turned around and was about to fly back to the light screen to train. The other great lords flew up as well. However, right at that moment, the two light screens, which had been motionless all this time, suddenly emitted a terrifying wave of energy. Two black figures appeared. The figures were blurry, and only their silhouettes could be seen. They were the legendary Great Lord and the Second Lord. They were the two mysterious Great Lords who were second only to the King of Darkness. It was said that they had started training almost at the same time as the King of Darkness and had not appeared for hundreds of years. At the very most, they had only appeared 3 years ago when the world changed and they had to stop training. No one knew how terrifying their strength was. Now, they had appeared again. The black and white elders who were standing outside were shocked. The Great Lord and the Second Lord have woken up. Swoosh, swoosh. Without hesitation, the two of them flew into the light screen. Welcome to the Great Lord and the Second Lord. The black and white elders were panicking. What news did the heavenly water tower's master bring to awaken these two powerful Great Lords? They did not need to be so respectful to the other 5 Great Lords. However, these two Great Lords were the real rulers and the strongest Great Lords. "Give me the letter." The Great Lord's voice was old and majestic. It was clear that he was emotionless, but everyone could feel an oppressive aura. The bearded elder's expression was also stern. He presented the letter with both hands respectfully, but at the same time, he felt uneasy. The letter landed in the hands of the black figure. He did not open it, but scanned the letter. Jiu Yuan Zhou. The Great Lord's aged voice reverberated in everyone's ears, and everyone who heard it felt a chill down their spines. "Sheng Yuan, I'll let you handle this matter. Is this how you handle it? How disappointing." The bearded elder's expression changed. He hurriedly bowed and said, "Please forgive me, Great Lord. I did not know that this letter was important." His heart was filled with shock. Even the other great monarchs were shocked as they stared at the letter in bewilderment. Jiu Yuan Zhou was an expert who could fight against the King of Darkness in the past. His letter must be something important. "How do you keep it?" The Great Lord's tone was stern. The bearded elder's face turned pale. Someone who could fight against the King of Darkness? What kind of expert was Jiu Yuan Zhou? Although his cultivation level has deteriorated and he is not as powerful as he was in the past, he is not someone you can keep. Face the wall outside for 3 years and reflect on your mistakes, the Great Lord said expressionlessly. The bearded elder was frightened. He felt wronged. How could he know who Jiu Yuan Zhou was? He had been careless and had to face the wall for 3 years. He would not be able to cultivate for 3 years, and his cultivation level would definitely be surpassed by another Great Lord. "Great Lord, I have just received this letter." The bearded elder had no choice but to defend himself. The Great Lord did not speak. He looked at the letter again. The tea stains and the marks left by the chessboard came into view. Black and white elders. Where is the messenger? The Great Lord looked past the bearded elder and at the black and white elders. Plop. The black and white elders' faces turned pale. It was as if the end of the world had come. Their backs were already drenched in sweat. "Grandfather, the black and white elders are too strict." The messenger was stopped at the door by them. He didn't even get to see the great sage. He has already left. The heavenly water tower's master glanced at the 2 old men whose faces were as red as pig's liver. Usually, their noses were in the air and they looked down on everyone. Now, they had finally tasted bitterness. The Great Lord's black figure moved. "How long did he keep this letter?" he asked. "Half a day." The black and white elders' faces were even uglier than a dead man's. Under the Great Lord's pressure, they trembled as they replied. How could they have known that this letter had such a powerful background? Does this mean that the heavenly water tower did not send a message? Do you intend to keep this letter forever? The Great Lord's tone was sharp. Great Lord, please spare our lives. We did not mean to. The black and white elders immediately kowtowed and begged for mercy. They banged their heads on the bluestone floor, and blood appeared on their foreheads. It was clear that they were panicking and terrified.